If you are also an extremely hardworking, cautious, and dedicated person, you will certainly identify with the hero of our story. His name is Rent, and he is a bronze-class adventurer. As previously stated, he is very hardworking and dedicated, and despite these virtues of his, after 10 years of acting as an adventurer, he was not able to advance beyond the second lowest rank among all explorers. Rent is a lone wolf, though not by his own choice, but rather because his skills leave much to be desired. After all, if after a decade of dedication, someone remains at the second worst level, this ultimately indicates that it is a lack of natural aptitude for the profession. His routine consists of waking up very early to obtain good contracts at the guild, but when he cannot manage to find any very interesting mission, he sets off to explore the labyrinth of the moon's reflection. This is a place that he has already traversed countless times. This is the simplest and most accessible dungeon of all, where even a novice with reasonable skills would be able to survive without great difficulties. But all of this changes on a certain day, at the moment when he is adventuring through the labyrinth due to not having obtained a better contract. While he walks, guiding himself by his map, he observes a passage that did not exist previously. He is quite excited upon discovering something unprecedented, since merely selling this information would yield a considerable amount of money with the guild. To his misfortune, Rent made the most drastic decision of his life, and he explores the passage on his own. But because of this, he ends up in front of a majestic and mythical creature, a dragon, the most powerful monster of all, capable of adopting multiple forms. Rent has full awareness that there is nothing he can do against such a monstrosity, and there is no alternative left for him except to accept his imminent doom. His only desire was to become a mithril-class adventurer, but his miserable life devoid of talent seemed to have reached its end. Or that was what he thought, since hours later, he awakened in the same location, with the appearance of a skeleton. Among all the people in the world, this misfortune had to happen precisely to him. The guy is extremely unlucky. Initially, he ponders that the best course of action would be to return to the Adventurers Guild, but he realizes that if he did so, he would end up being attacked by other explorers. They would take him to the bishops, so that he could be purified and eliminated completely. After all, as it was taught to him by his old acquaintance, Lorraine, divine magic is the worst enemy of the undead, and now he is one of them. Upon observing the surroundings better, he deduces that the dragon must have departed, and concludes that the ideal choice is to move away from there, since the creature can return at any moment. While he walks through the dungeon, he mentions that there are many labyrinths scattered across the world, and even though many investigators try to discover their mysteries, nobody was able to comprehend their functioning, or much less their origin. The benefits of this labyrinth, as is to be imagined, are the obtaining of magic items of great value, and monsters that provide precious materials upon being defeated. From where these monsters emerge is also a mystery, but Rent feels quite frustrated upon thinking that his companions from the guild must be in the labyrinth of the new moon, which is a much more profitable location. He decides to wait so that some solitary adventurer appears to explore the place. But first he needs to resolve a fundamental problem: communication. How could he communicate if he no longer possesses the capacity to speak? And at that moment, another skeleton appears in front of him and advances in his direction. Rent is aware that with his current physical condition, he will have more difficulties to fight than before, and the poor guy even ends up falling with the weight of his own sword. But by luck, the other skeleton is even more clumsy than he is, and falls with its face on the ground. While the monster attempts to relocate its own leg, Rent reflects on how to face it. Although he does not possess muscles to apply his conventional swordsmanship techniques, he realizes that he can utilize his spiritual energy in substitution of the vital energy that he utilized when he was human. In this manner, he manages to defeat the skeleton easily, eliminating it in a definitive way. The body of the enemy disintegrates and is absorbed by Rent, or at least the spiritual energy of the creature is assimilated. In that instant, he remembers the explanations of his friend Lorraine about how the evolution and development of monsters are much superior to those of human. Skeleton, for example, will always be skeletons in their essence, but through combat, they can come to become ghouls. They possess more flesh and physical strength, and the objective of Rent now is to defeat various monsters to achieve the existential evolution mentioned by Lorraine. Meanwhile, she herself is at her residence, quite bothered by the fact that our hero has not visited her for the second consecutive day. Rent, for his part, continues defeating several skeletons, and with each victory, he becomes considerably stronger, in addition to recovering his energies simultaneously. Thanks to this, now he can utilize spiritual energy in all of his confrontations. He then decided to utilize his skills against some stronger monsters, and in sight, a slime. He chooses to maintain his distance, since physical attacks do not have much effect against creatures of liquid mass. With magic, he would defeat it easily, but he does not possess the capacity to cast attack spells. Without another option, he faces it with what he has, which is using his physical body itself, needing to strike the core to defeat it. With luck, he manages to land the blow on the very first attempt, and after the victory, he collects the magic rune of the creature, and utilizing glass vials, he collects some of the fluid of the monster, which is highly valued for skin treatment. He even considers using it on himself, but he does not have any skin to care for, so he is going to sell the material to pay for several days of lodging and rest peacefully. In another scene at the Adventurers Guild, we see them mentioning that a novice is interested in joining the group, but they desire primarily to designate an experienced adventurer to accompany her. It was expected that it would be Rent, but since he did not appear, he novice, needing resources, departed alone. She went toward the labyrinth of the moon's reflection, relying on her skill with the sword. Returning to our beloved undead hero, he does not feel fatigue nor hunger. Since he is an undead, he spent the entire night combating monsters, and is quite frustrated because his existential evolution has still not occurred. Fortunately, although his physical condition declined initially, the constant combat brought him back to the peak of strength that he possessed previously, which sincerely was not much, since he was quite weak. His spiritual energy functions perfectly, and he is capable of manipulating mana. The most surprising thing is that, despite him being an undead, he remains capable of utilizing divine magic, but he only utilizes it to prevent his bread from rotting, something that he will hardly manage to eat in his current state, maintaining the intention of keeping it until he obtains a body suitable for food consumption. He prefers to act with caution, facing 1 or 2 monsters at a time, because facing larger groups would force him to retreat. He becomes frustrated with his own weakness. After all, 10 years as bronze-class adventurers would discourage anyone. Furthermore, he trained for another 10 years before that, totaling 20 years of daily effort, which seemed to not have yielded the expected fruits. He is capable of utilizing spiritual energy, mana, and divine magic, something that not even high-ranking adventurers manage to do simultaneously. But he would give everything to be truly strong in just one of these arts. Normally, any person would have given up a long time ago, but Rent is persistent. He trained excessively, and together with his friend Lorraine, he learned the nature of monsters. He accepted every type of task and did the possible and the impossible to achieve his dream of becoming a mithril-class adventurer. But it did not work out very well. This is a title reserved for only the few who accomplished heroic deeds of national level. But our hero here is formidable. Nothing is going to stop him. He did not become discouraged even a little bit. Not even this fact of him having transformed into a skeleton discouraged him. So he continues advancing, defeating any enemy that is in his path, and now he perceives that he is much stronger than when he was human. After defeating another slime, he collects its fluids, but the energy of this creature fuses into his body, initiating his so desired existential evolution. He then ceases to be a skeleton and evolves into a ghoul. He feels satisfied, because despite possessing a decomposing body, now he has a little bit of muscle mass and tissues. If he continues at this pace, he will even be able to evolve into a vampire, acquiring an even more human appearance. The way he is right now, he looks more like a zombie. If he attempts to speak with any person, they will certainly be frightened, and since he is with this new appearance, he even attempts to speak, but his diction and vocabulary are still not perfect. Yet he manages to emit some words, even if in a somewhat rudimentary way. Some time passes, and now he is capable of facing considerably strong goblin, although he still needs to utilize the geography of the dungeon to his advantage to combat them individually. But thanks to his evolution, and to the mastery of spiritual and divine energies, he became much more powerful than when he was alive. The guy is becoming formidable, and utilizing his spiritual energy, he decapitates some goblins with ease. Upon finalizing the combat, he hears sounds of fighting inside the dungeon. It is Rena Rupaj. She is that novice adventurer from before. She is defeating a wandering skeleton, and Rent feels quite emotional to see another human after so much time, even though he himself is no longer one. He hides and decides to observe her from afar, as he cannot permit her to see him in that zombie state. He fears that she might attack him or panic, and upon observing her, He notes that she is indeed a beginner, for despite demonstrating a certain fragility, Rent recognizes all the members of the Malt Guild, even though this occurs due to the fact that many pester him for being a weak adventurer. But at the guild, everyone likes him quite a lot, since even though he is someone without great skills, they have not expelled him from there yet. He continues following the young woman in the dungeon, but he remains in a state of alert, since the girl went into a corridor that is filled with traps. A skeleton emerges from nowhere behind Rena, but she manages to block the blow, demonstrating that despite being a novice, the girl knows what she is doing. She has good training, although she still lacks a lot of combat experience. Due to being a beginner, she still needs to deliver many blows against the skeletons, and this ends up making her completely forget to observe the environment around her. And in this manner, she ends up being cornered by the creature. But if she desires to become an adventurer, she cannot be defeated by a simple skeleton like that one, and she advances against the monster. But unfortunately, the skeleton blocks her attack and holds her sword. Rena, upon perceiving that she is in trouble, receives help from Rent, who leaps to distract the monster. The young blonde woman cannot react immediately and stands still momentarily, so Rent utilizes his spiritual energy, and with a sword strike, he cuts the skeleton in half. He approaches the girl and feels joyful upon seeing that she is well, and he even attempts to introduce himself to her. Although the situation does not turn out exactly in the best possible way, but upon noting that Rent is desperate to communicate, she stops to listen to him. Our hero speaks that he is an adventurer, but Rena questions him about the reason why he possesses that appearance. Rent explains that he does not know with exactness what happened. For now he is alive, but at the same time, he is not. Rena, frightened, asks if he intends to leave the dungeon, and if he does not think about attacking her from behind. Rent speaks that he does not intend to do any of that, because adventurers must support each other. He only wants to ask a big favor. He desires that she purchase some clothes with which he can cover his body. He hands her a pouch with money and supplicates for her to help him with this request. In view of this, Rena introduces herself and declares that as the daughter of a knight, she will repay her debt to him. After all, it was Rent who saved her life. She says goodbye, but does not fail to be careful, because obviously our hero here is an undead. Meanwhile, Rent reflects that a true adventurer would inform the guild that a zombie is wandering through the dungeon, and he hopes that she does not betray him. But in case that happens, he will have to take charge of the situation at that exact moment. It is then that he returns to the depths of the dungeon to continue strengthening himself. And later, in the city of Malt, Rena meets with the guild receptionist, and at that moment, we would certainly think that the daughter of a knight would betray him, but in another scene, we see Rent, who is facing a slime much larger than the usual. He feels incredible, because he notes the great amount of difference in his current strength. In comparison to when he was still a human, he is giving thanks to God for having become a zombie. He defeats the slime by destroying its core, and perceives that he developed a combat intuition. This is a talent that he wanted very much when he was still a human, and now he knows how high-ranking adventurers feel. But who would think that he would manage to achieve this with that completely broken body? At that, he hears the voice of Rena, who shouts his name throughout the dungeon, and upon seeing her, he is surprised, because he did not expect that she would return. Rena begins to stand on guard, and asks if he is really Rent. He reveals that the undead do not usually ascend to the first levels of the dungeons, confirming that it is indeed him. Rena notes that now he speaks in a much more fluid way, but that is because he spent a lot of time practicing. The blonde woman rejoices for him, and delivers the things that he requested. In addition to the change, Rent feels bad upon seeing that she distrusts him a lot. And let us be sincere, many people would have taken his money and gone away and never returned, something that nobody could deny. And Rena then asks for him to forgive her, since she is still quite frightened of him, but believes that with time she will get used to it. Rent tells her to relax, and upon reviewing the pouch he becomes impressed, upon seeing that she chose a very common color so that he would not stand out among people. Rena then reveals that she met with someone at the Adventurers Guild so that they would take her to trustworthy shops, and sought things that could be useful such as boots, gloves, and some bandages. Rent becomes quite emotional upon seeing that the girl is a kind soul, and upon trying on all the clothes, he passes from an undead of unpleasant appearance to an adventurer with a very decent look. He now looks like a normal human being, but although his clothing covers him a lot, he continues drawing attention on account of his face. At that, Rena seeks something in her bag and removes a mask that she purchased because of thinking that it would not be good for him to show his face in the town. She mentions that when she met him she thought he was an uncommon monster, or a named monster, something like a special creature. But that is not very far from reality indeed. It is then that he puts on the formidable skull mask, but it is cursed and ends up sticking to his face, being in this manner impossible to remove it. And Rena apologizes because she did not imagine that it was cursed. Of all the things that she purchased, that was the only item for which she went to a very suspicious market. She had purchased everything in the trustworthy shops of the guild, except this mask, and since it was very cheap, she took the opportunity to purchase it. When she verified it, there was no curse. But that is because the curse of the mask only activates when it is placed on the face. Rent attempted to use his divine magic to break the curse, and Rena becomes quite surprised upon seeing that he is capable of using divine magic. But he is not capable of breaking the curse, because he is out of energy. Although the mask indeed is cursed, since his divine magic reacted, Rena returns to apologize to him. Due to her fault, now he carries a cursed object right on his face. But Rent reassures her, since in any case he would have to use it the entire time, and he will only have to gather enough money to pay a cleric of the church so that they break the curse, so everything is fine. He approaches to say that she should not worry, but he remembers that she is afraid of him, and when he attempts to move away, Rena stops him, affirming that she no longer has fear. In this short period of time, she could see that our hero is an excellent person, and Rent thanks her, but speaks that she does not need to force herself until she feels confident enough. Some time later, they depart with the wagon toward the town of Malt, where Rena confesses that she is registered as an adventurer in the guild of the capital, but that there exist many famous adventurers there, and since there are no jobs for novices, they recommended that she go to the town of Malt to perform services and become known. Furthermore, in that place there exist 2 dungeons very close by, and this surprises Rent considerably, since he did not expect that a person from the city would go to the countryside solely wanting to be an adventurer. But Rena yearns to be a mature and very strong adventurer as fast as possible. But Rent advises her to be a bit more cautious, for life is unique, and he speaks this from own experience, since he went through a near-death situation. But thinking about it well, it was basically a death, only that he revived afterward. Rena appreciates his advice and observes him intrigued. Upon arriving in Malt, Rent speaks to her that now he will continue on his own, since she has already done much for him, and in that place many people know him, and if he shows his identification he will be discovered. But Rena proposes them going to the west entrance, which few people utilize. Rent thanks for everything that she did for him. However, he does not want to continue involving her in this matter, and it is true that he needs the help of someone, but now he is a monster, and if she introduces him into the town, this could end up making her an accomplice, which could result in the loss of her adventurer license. He does not want to cause problems for the girl, but Rena says that this does not matter, because if she had not met him she would already be dead. Now she wants to risk her life for him at least once. And without more options, our hero ends up accepting help, since the young woman is quite obstinate. When they are about to enter, the guards ask for their identification, and upon reviewing them they do not find problem. But the detail is that one of the guards interests himself considerably in Rena, and asks his companion if he has seen that subject before. As they do not recognize him, they order that he remove the mask. But by luck Rena intervenes, and confesses that he uses the cursed mask, and cannot remove it no matter how much he tries. She invents that he became gravely wounded after fighting against the monster, and Rent follows the play, showing his lifeless skin. The guards surprise themselves, and Rena, like a good liar, continues trying to convince them. She says that she purchased the mask to cover his wounds, but it ended up revealing itself to be cursed. The young woman, besides being very kind, is a beautiful liar. Rent, to end the matter for good, says that they can attempt to remove the mask, and the guards, upon attempting to do so, prove that what he says is true, or at least the story is consistent. The two manage to pass through this tight spot, and Rent once more expresses his gratitude, since he would not be there if it were not for her. At that, the wagon passes in front of them, and in the blink of an eye, Rent was no longer by her side. Rena searches for him everywhere, but our hero observes her from afar, thinking that she is a very good girl. She possesses skill with the sword, in addition to being very intelligent, and he does not want her brilliant future to be ruined because of his fault. When he is with a more human appearance, he will return to apologize to her properly. During the night, he goes to the house of his friend Lorraine in search of help. He knocks at her door, but nobody opens, so, ignoring the privacy of others, he simply enters anyway. He observes Lorraine. She is sleeping, and he even attempts to awaken her, but she turns over and asks for him to let her sleep. Rent says that he is going to strike her with a book, and with this, she finally gets up. Upon observing him, she is surprised and asks if he is really Rent. He asks for her to not be frightened by that mask, And at that moment, our hero removes his gloves and shows his hand, leaving Lorraine completely impacted. She requests for him to tell all the details of what happened, and going back in time, we see that Lorraine in reality was not sleeping. She indeed heard the door and identified that it was the characteristic knock of Rent, but she decided to lie down on the sofa, since she found it very strange the fact of him not having entered directly. And now, in a very near present, Rent updates her about all the experiences that he lived. Lorraine can no longer believe what she is hearing. She is a specialist in studying magic and the monsters of the labyrinth, and had never heard reports about a dragon that transformed into undead the people it devours. But by the appearance of the poor guy, she has no other option except to believe him. Rent surprises himself upon seeing how Lorraine manages to remain calm despite seeing him in that state. After all, she is a scholar, a mage, and a top-tier adventurer, but he feels that she is observing him as an object of scientific study, rather than as the friend he used to be. Lorraine asks directly if, now that he is an undead, he is indeed Rent Faina. He answers that he does not know for certain. Despite possessing his memories and his consciousness, he without any doubt died in that place. And Lorraine, upon hearing him, confirms that this type of reflection is something that only Rent would say. She decides to leave the debate about the permanence of his identity for later, since the most important thing now is what he intends to do. Rent makes it very clear that he intends to continue being an adventurer, since he is not going to give up on his dream of becoming a mithril class adventurer. The detail is that he cannot appear at the guild with that appearance, so he desires that Lorraine accept the missions and be his name. She sees no problem in this, but she emphasizes that with that appearance, he also cannot continue staying at the inn, and invites him to live with her, as she already knows the personality of Rent. She knows that he will feel uncomfortable living without costs. Therefore, in exchange, she wants permission to study him. Rent accepts, provided that she does not end up dissecting the poor guy. But Lorraine only wants some small samples of his skin and muscle for her investigation, since it is a great opportunity to study a monster that possesses existential evolution. On the following day, Lorraine returns from the city and pays Rent for the objects that he brought from the labyrinth, such as the beautifying fluid of the slimes and the runes that he obtained from the monsters. Rent is surprised upon seeing that it is a considerable amount of money, but this happens because she pays him directly to save the commission of the guild. Rent takes advantage of the money to go to the blacksmith of the city, but while he walks along the street, people begin to look at him with fear and distrust. Rent quickens his pace, and upon arriving at the blacksmith shop, the receptionist is startled upon seeing him. Rent apologizes for his suspicious appearance and requests a new sword. The receptionist, upon reviewing his old weapon, notes that he took very good care of it, but that it has already reached its physical limit. Judging by the details, she supposes that he is using magic or spiritual energy. Rent, demonstrating his capabilities, confesses that he can use both, in addition to divine magic. The receptionist becomes quite impressed and mentions that only one person previously had arrived at that location with those same skills. Rent requests for her to keep this a secret, for he already knows that she refers to him, or at least to him when he was alive. The young woman answers that she will keep this skill a secret, because after all, one cannot maintain that business without a good relationship with the clients. Rent hands over the money and asks if the amount is correct, and the employee affirms that they are going to do an excellent work. He pays half of the value, and the remainder will be left for when the service is ready. Furthermore, she warns him that very possibly the blacksmith crotch will desire to speak with him when he has the work accomplished, which may take some days. But Rent speaks that he prides himself considerably in his craft. Rent speaks that there are no problems, and that if she needs to look for him, she only needs to go to the house of the scholar Lorraine. The receptionist becomes quite surprised to hear this, but agrees, and meanwhile, Lorraine continues investigating more about ghouls. She observes that they arise from dead humans and notes that there are cases where powerful creatures transformed humans into undead. But in these cases, the victims not only lose their mentality, but also their will and sentiments. She cannot arrive at a conclusion without solid bases, for Rent is a very special case. But despite everything, she feels that he remains the same as always. At that moment, she has a memory of when she was younger. An adventurer offered himself to carry her things, and she would not need to pay anything, since he was an iron-class adventurer, and the real intention was that he could obtain some experience. In the Blue Wood, while she searches for herbs, she reflects that her time at that period was a bit tedious. She was the youngest girl to achieve the title of Great Doctor, but that was not a great exploit for her. With this title, she registered herself as a silver-ranked adventurer and departed for the neighboring country of Ya. She did not tell anyone, and at that moment she was in search of herbs, since she had nothing better to do. So she finally obtains the flowers that she was looking for. She orders our young adventurer to carry her flowers, but upon attempting to put them away, she notes that our hero had already collected and stored many others, and this guy is none other than Rent himself. Upon examining one of them, she surprises herself and asks how he knows how to manipulate those flowers. Rent ignores her and enters into a guard position upon observing that there is a goblin nearby. Monsters prepare themselves to attack them, but Rent protects Lorraine and orders that she use fire magic. Upon attacking the creature, Rent is surprised with how powerful the magic of the girl is. A short time later, he offers her water and asks if that was her first combat. Lorraine answers that no, but explains that she was always accompanied by escorts or other people. Rent confesses that for a silver-class adventurer, he noted that she was a bit inexperienced. This worried the others of the guild, and for that reason they asked for him to accompany her. And Lorraine asks how he knows so much about plants. Rent answers that someone once told him that if he wanted to be a very strong adventurer, he would have to learn to read, write, and study the monsters. In addition to the plants, Lorraine becomes quite intrigued and asks his name, moment in which both introduce themselves formally. She, a bit awkwardly, requests for him to teach her about plants and about how to fight, in addition to the fact that he knows how to move through the wood, and she desires to learn everything. It was in this way that the two met, and in the following 10 years Rent exerted himself considerably some days to achieve the mithril class. Although he never managed to do so in fact, she remained by his side, investigating what she loved most. And back to the present, she remembers that she needs to reply to some pending letters so as not to be reprimanded once more. But since they do not know her exact whereabouts, she needs to wait for Rent to return. And meanwhile, our hero decides to thank the blacksmith for accepting the order of his new sword. Crotch looks at him seriously and assures that he is going to do a good work with his weapon. The receptionist delivers a reserve sword to be used until the order is ready, warning that with that sword, he will be capable of using magic and spiritual energy. But only these two. Rent says goodbye, and while he moves away, Crotch reflects that it seems that this young man got himself into a colossal problem. The receptionist asks why they do not ask for help, and thinks that perhaps Rent does not trust them. Both are conscious that that sword is Rent, and think that perhaps he contracted some dangerous curse and did not want to involve anyone in his problem. And Rent in fact does not desire to bother anyone else, but by confessing his skills, he permitted them to know who he really was, since only he possessed those differentiated abilities. They know that he is staying with Lorraine, and believe that it will not take much time until he tells the truth. For now, it does not seem that Rent intends to circulate much through the city. Sometime later, Lorraine becomes fascinated with the dishes created by Rent, for it had been a long time since she last ate them. He counts that he took advantage of her absence to review her books, and it becomes obvious that he is not a simple zombie. Perhaps this is due to his ability of evolution, and she has curiosity to know into what he is going to transform or evolve once more. For this, he needs to enter once more into the dungeon and face many more monsters to be able to become stronger. Lorraine smiles upon hearing him, since even though he is completely broken, in a body that makes no sense, he remains the same as always. Some days later, an adventurer is cornered by a slime, but when he is about to be devoured, Rent defeats the monster and asks if the man is well. The adventurer thanks him and shows that he suffered only a light cut. Rent follows his path without saying anything else. An adventurer is responsible for their actions, and many do not usually help others. But there are always deceitful people around, so in some cases people keep pretending to be victims to later betray and rob their benefactors. But this does not usually occur with frequency in Malt, and the adventurer runs after him and requests for him to let him accompany him, because he needs money. Since he just registered himself as an adventurer, he confesses that he is not capable of defeating even a simple slime. And although Rent mentions that slimes are opponents for swordsmen, the subject confesses that in reality he is a cook, but he possesses many debts, so he had to join the adventurers to manage to pay them. He needs to settle 15 gold coins in the following week, and he accepted doing what would be necessary to join some group. But nobody ended up giving an opportunity to the poor guy, and for that reason he went alone to that labyrinth. Since this labyrinth is the only one you can enter being alone, although this only applies to whoever possesses in fact necessary skills, which is not his case clearly. Rent then answers that he is occupied, and thinks that although he wanted to give a helping hand to the guy, he does not believe that he would be of great help. But after reflecting better, He accepts letting the man accompany him, since he at least can serve to carry the collected items. The novice becomes quite excited, and plans to demonstrate that he is someone strong, but for Rent, upon seeing the blood in this way, he feels very unsettled. He feels fear of himself, and asks if he still continues being himself. He remembers the words of Lorraine, and does not like what he is feeling, so they continue advancing together, and he takes him to the hidden passage, through where he had entered previously, when he was devoured by the divine dragon. Meanwhile, the adventurer surprises himself upon noting that that path does not appear on the map, and upon entering, he surprises himself even more, upon seeing that there existed some place like that one inside the labyrinth of the moon's reflection. Upon noting that the dragon is not in the location, Rent searches for something useful, but cannot find any object of value. At that moment, the adventurer warns that he found a secret passage, and upon seeing it, proposes to our hero to inform the guild so that they pay a fortune for this information. But Rent observes him, and the man becomes nervous. He clarifies that the merit would be entirely Rent's, because he was merely following him, and Rent does not show any interest in glory, and speaks that the man can keep it. But for now he desires only to continue advancing. They end up in an empty room, and the adventurer complains, speaking that at least there should be some treasure. Rent attempts to stop him, but the man answers that there is no reason to worry, since there is no monster around. Little does he know that Rent died by a dragon. But anyway, Rent ends up observing a pentagram on the floor, and asks himself if the adventurer is incapable of seeing it, and upon entering, the adventurer is transported to another location, and Rent perceives that it is a teleportation circle. Normally these circles send adventurers to a lower floor with much stronger monsters, or to a location filled with mortal traps. He thinks that he should abandon him, but feels that upon doing that, he would become a true monster. He then enters the magic circle to save his small adventurer friend, and upon entering, he observes that the guy is fallen on the ground completely broken. After approaching, a giant skeleton appears, and Rent faces the skeleton, but his attacks do not have much effect. Spiritual energy causes no damage at all, and he makes an attempt with magic, but it also ends up not working very well, and he observes around in search of an exit, but notes that it had disappeared, which demonstrates it to be one of those rooms from which one cannot escape until defeating the boss. A beautiful trap. Then he remembers that the blacksmith warned him that he could not use divinity with that sword, but if he does not use it, he will end up in serious trouble. He tries to control it to the maximum, using only a tiny bit of divine power, and this finally causes enough damage, and he brings down the giant skeleton by destroying its leg, finalizing it with sword strikes to the head. Next, he uses his divinity to heal the wounds of the adventurer, who, worried, asks about the skeleton, but Rent answers only that with his current power, he can manage to perform only first aid, not being capable of healing the wounds completely. But upon looking to the side, the man is surprised to see the remains of the giant skeleton, and cannot believe that the guy simply defeated it alone. Rent shows him the rune that the monster left behind, and the adventurer mentions that it had to be very strong to leave such a large rune. Rent answers that it was only luck, and speaks that the man can keep the rune if he wants, although nothing is for free, since he needs a small favor. Rent then shows him only his arm, and recounts that he was defeated by a monster, and now with this appearance, he is not capable of entering shops, nor the guild, which is why the man must do this in his place. And the adventurer, seeing the size of the advantage, accepts being put in charge of the errands, but asks if he does not desire anything else. Rent then requests for him to let him eat at his restaurant, but for free. The adventurer then begins to cry, and answers that he can eat as many times as he wants, because this time he does not think about letting the restaurant go bankrupt, giving thanks for saving the guild and his business. Rent then delivers the rune to the adventurer, and speaks that it is time to depart, but he asks through where, since there is no exit. Rent understands that he is not capable of seeing magic circles, and he warns that he only needs to walk and reach the location from where they came. The adventurer obeys, while Rent observes another magic circle, but feels that it is still not the moment to continue advancing. A bit later they arrive in the city, where the adventurer shows his restaurant, and Rent observes that it is a very clean and very beautiful location. Perhaps the food is not so bad to the point of killing someone. At that, the wife of the adventurer comes out, named Isabel, who runs to embrace him upon seeing that he remains alive. Upon noting that her husband is wounded, she requests to go to the hospital, but he answers that he is fine, because the young man by his side healed his wounds, and even gave that beautiful rune so he would not lose the restaurant. Isabel, worried, reprimands her husband, since he learns, and she has fear that they return to deceive him, since he has no more money. He answers that she must not worry, since that young man saved his life. Although it does not look like it, he is a good person. He told about his debt and Rent decided to help him, but in exchange he will help him with something. Isabel worries, thinking that he is going to do something dangerous. But he says that it is the contrary. He promised Rent that he would eat for free at the restaurant. And Isabel then stands, and the adventurer remembers that he did not introduce himself and speaks to Rent that his name is Loris Cariello, that one is his wife Isabel. They express gratitude once more and Rent says goodbye. But before departing, Loris asks his name and Rent reveals it, but requests for him to keep it a secret and not tell anyone. However, upon departing, Rent thinks that it would have been much easier if Loris were just a deceitful criminal. While his vision begins to become all blurry and strange, I think that he is going to need to use glasses. He mentions that he desires to test something on someone malicious. While he goes to the house of Lorraine, his vision turns red once more. He asks himself what is going on. Upon entering, Lorraine asks if he managed to see the dragon from before, but he only approaches, and Lorraine worries and asks if he is fine. But Rent only embraces her and speaks that he is happy. She asks if he is drunk, but I think that zombies cannot become intoxicated. Rent squeezes with force and ends up yielding to temptation, and his mask opens and he bites the girl. Lorraine manages to push him away, while Rent savors the blood. Lorraine attempts to make him recover his reason, and after he reacts, she attacks him with a spell, leaving him knocked out. She hopes that he can rest and says that if he intends to grab her like that once more, she hopes that at least he is sober, because that way she will be able to let him devour her when he wants. Upon awakening, his mask remains open in the part of the mouth, and Lorraine asks if he feels something strange or some impulse to eat. Rent feels fine and apologizes for having torn a piece out of her. Lorraine speaks that everything is fine and that she already expected that something like that could happen. After all, he is a zombie. Rent recounts that he met a man in the labyrinth, and upon seeing his blood, he felt an uncontrollable hunger. He contained the impulse, but upon seeing her he could not endure it anymore. I think that I can understand. Anyway, Lorraine explains that zombies prefer flesh to human blood, and it was to be expected that something like that would happen. By luck it was with her and not with another person, and she asks how his body is, since he never contains himself when attacking, and upon verifying that he is well, she orders him to rest. But Rent stops her and says that he wants to see what he did to her. And upon seeing the wound, Lorraine recounts that she sold all the potions, but that there is no reason for worry, because she will make a new one on the following day. Rent does not want to wait and uses his divine magic to heal her. Lorraine surprises herself upon seeing that he is capable of using all this divinity, and she mentions that the sensation is quite pleasant, and that never before had she been healed with divine magic. After removing all the bandage, he notes that the wound healed completely, but it still has a bit of a scar, and Rent refuses to leave her with a mark on her body, so he continues healing her until completely erasing her scar. Now Lorraine cannot say that he hurt her body. A bit later they observe that Rent evolved once more. His body now looks much more human than before and only has some superficial wounds. But he still has a somewhat zombie-like aspect in his mouth, and he also surprises himself upon seeing that his mask changed shape. He cannot let them see him like this. And at that, the mask covers once more his mouth and uncovers his eyes. The mask works basically according to his desires, and they can remove it upon desiring for it to come off. But that does not work. The girl even attempts to pull it from his face, but also cannot, and his body looks much better. But his face remains that of an undead, so he is going to have to continue hiding himself. But now even his voice sounds much better. He can speak with much more fluidity, and Rent asks himself why this happened only now and not when he defeated the giant skeleton. Lorraine arrives at the conclusion that perhaps her blood nourished him, and in this manner he ceased to be a zombie, and now is more like a distant relative of vampires, something common among those monsters that serve vampires. They are weaker than lesser vampires, but they are stronger than a zombie. He cannot understand the reason, since existential evolution, just like the labyrinths, remains a mystery for scholars. Her theory bases itself on the fact that at the beginning he was a skeleton and later came to be a zombie. However, it is strange that he passed from skeleton to zombie, since existential evolution transforms the monster into something more powerful, and the zombie is not the only monster stronger than the skeleton. And there also exist skeleton soldiers or skeleton knights. According to her hypothesis, it may be that existential evolution transforms the monster into the form that it desires to adopt. For example, Rent spends the entire time time repeating that he desires to be more human. But Rent asks himself why he did not become a lesser vampire directly. Lorraine explains that just like at the Adventurers Guild, he cannot leap from the iron rank directly to gold. It is necessary to fulfill certain requirements and possess sufficient power. According to experiments conducted on lesser monsters, they evolve into a form that adapts to the environment. For example, in a volcanic zone they acquire affinity with fire, while in water zones they gain aquatic affinity. Evolution is a reaction to the environment, and if it functions according to the will of the user, Rent may possess this potential. With this strength, he can come to become a vampire and, who knows, nurture the hope of one day returning to be human. Although Lorraine does not believe much in that part. But this right here is a fantasy world, so anything can happen. If we already see a crazy guy with a smartphone and simply destroy everything, imagine what it is that Rent can do. For him to continue evolving, he is going to need to do more than just defeat monsters. To reach his current form, he needed to ingest flesh and the blood of Lorraine. Certainly, to transform into a vampire, he is going to have to fulfill other requirements. There are still many unknowns, but at least now they possess a theory to guide them. The boy has a long path to traverse, but at least now he has Lorraine by his side to support him. However, after a moment of unconditional support, Lorraine returns to being the same as always and tells him to prepare himself, since now she is going to collect his sample. She desires to photograph his entire body and perform incisions to collect material for tests. She wants to verify if he feels pain or if the anesthesia takes effect in his organism. She has diverse curiosities to prove, such as for example his appetite, his rest, and if he is capable of ingesting food normally. As he is very close to being a vampire, they decide to leave the tests for the following day, because probably the guy must already be quite tired, and despite all this, she still maintains a good sense from time to time. The following day, while Lorraine rests, Rent is outside practicing with the sword. He feels much better now and no longer feels that wild impulse from when he attacked the poor blonde girl. However, he cannot return to the labyrinth with a sword in that state, and he is certain that Crotch is going to be very furious upon seeing it. Said and done, the blacksmith, upon seeing the weapon, asks what the hell he did with it, affirming that he can no longer repair it, because all the materials of the blade were damaged. Rent apologizes and confesses that he had to use divinity on the sword, and Crotch answers that this explains the damage, but emphasizes that there is no need to use divinity to kill the monsters of the labyrinth of the moon's reflection. Rent then reveals that he encountered a giant skeleton, which surprises our blacksmith considerably, since that would be something impossible. However, he knows the personality of Rent quite well and knows that he would not lie about something like that. He asks where he found it, and Rent recounts that he accessed unexplored areas, and this surprises the blacksmith even more. He almost calls him by his name, but feigns ignorance to continue the game. Due to it being an unexplored zone, he understands the reason for Rent having returned in those conditions, and he asks if Rent has already completely explored the location, but he speaks that not yet, requesting for the sword to be ready as soon as possible. The blacksmith speaks that the original will still take a little while, but since he does not want another adventurer to anticipate themselves in the exploration of that area, he decides to lend another sword, this time a much superior one, since he is one of his best clients. Upon leaving, Rent thinks that it is obvious that the blacksmith already knows who he is. What he said would not be capable of deceiving him, but at least he managed to borrow a very good sword, and now he can return to the labyrinth swiftly and achieve it as fast as possible. On his way back, he observes Loris and Isabel, who are purchasing all the vegetables in the market and inviting the people of the city to the inauguration of the restaurant. Meanwhile, we see Lorraine, who is utilizing various materials to create a mortal poison capable of eliminating even a red bear very easily. These ingredients, isolated, would cause only a stunning or a very light poisoning. Rent thinks that alchemy is a very terrible poison and begins to fear for having helped Lorraine with her experiment. Upon testing the substance, he says that he feels unwell, but not because the poison affected him, but rather because the flavor is terrible. Lorraine answers that he is the only person who was capable of evaluating the flavor of that poison. But the most important thing is to note that the toxin does not affect him, although for some reason, the healing herbs and the potions still function on him. And that convenience of the script. She mentions that he possesses a very interesting body, and as they have already been conducting experiments for a long time, she asks herself how he remains incapable of feeling sleep. since he is a white. Then, Rent confirms that he really feels nothing, and Lorraine feels envy, since she would like quite a lot not to need to sleep so she could continue with her crazy research. She asks about his appetite, and Rent confesses that although light, he feels a desire for flesh and human blood. Lorraine then hands him a vial, and Rent worries, thinking that it is more poison, but the blonde tells him to relax and only open it. Upon doing so, he perceives that it is blood, the blood of Lorraine herself. She placed a preservation magic on the vial, because although he refuses to ingest it, he must do so from time to time to avoid losing control. Rent recognizes that she is right and uses a single drop of the blood to control his anxiety, and upon tasting it, he becomes enchanted. Lorraine asks if just one tiny drop suffices to calm his thirst, and Rent feels more than satisfied and decides to save the remainder. On the following day, he warns Lorraine that he is going to the labyrinth, but first he needs to stop by the Adventurers Guild to look for some contract. Lorraine reminds him that whenever he wants to take a contract directly at the guild, he is going to have to show his identification that he is Rent Faina, and doing that with that appearance is going to be a great scandal. But Rent thinks that he will pass unnoticed, since he is only a bronze ranking adventurer. But Lorraine reminds him that there exist thousands of ranking adventurers. He was especially adored by everyone, because he did the possible to help the novices and accepted every type of task, so he was very well known. Rent answers that they were only minor tasks, but Lorraine reveals that there was a rumor around that the guild wanted to hire him to work internally for them. Rent surprises himself considerably, because if he were a talented adventurer, he would believe it. The blonde tells him to stop belittling himself. Probably they did not say anything to him because he never gave indications of wanting to retire. She knows this because of having been registered at the guild, and Rent likes the fact of having been appreciated by everyone quite a lot. However, he does not intend to retire, nor to work for the guild, because his dream is to be a mithril ranking adventurer. And the detail is that to fulfill this dream he must demonstrate his value personally, and he will not be able to do this by sending other people to take contracts for him. But to do this, he is going to have to show his identification at the moment of accepting the task. And if the guild discovers that he is Rent Faina, it will be a big problem. And that is why Lorraine proposes that he transform into another person. On the following day, he arrives at the guild with his new look. He is quite nostalgic about returning there, and upon seeing Sheila, he rejoices to see her well. And it is impressive that it seems that every guild receptionist is named Sheila in every location. Anyway, she addresses him and asks if he is new to the place, and Rent warns that he desires to register himself as an adventurer. Sheila then hands over the form that he must complete, and warns that she can fill out the whole form, but the name he himself must write. Rent warns that he knows how to read and write, something that not all adventurers know how to do, and Sheila explains that he can leave blank the difficult parts. But if he puts his skills and magics, he will be able to receive more contracts. While he fills out the form, he remembers that 10 years have already passed since the first time he registered himself. At that time, he did not know what a skill was, so he only wrote his name and age. Now everything is very different, although he maintains the same objective as always. At that moment, he remembers what Lorraine said. She proposed that he register himself with another name, and we see that from the start he denied it, since it went against the rules of the guild. But Lorraine warned him that it was not that big of a deal. It was enough for him not to be discovered, and in case they were, everyone already knew him, so they would understand the reason. Furthermore, nobody would question a traveling adventurer, no matter how suspect they might seem. The detail is that he would leave behind his achievements as Rent Faina and would go to the iron ranking once more, something that to Rent does not matter, since his objective remains unchanged as always. Upon delivering the form, Sheila surprises herself, since the brilliant idea of this scoundrel was to put his name as Rent Vivi. One can see that the creativity of this guy is over 8,000. He asks Sheila if there is any problem, and she answers that it is nothing, only that a few days ago an adventurer vanished who was also named Rent. He notes that she is very worried, which was to be expected, since they have known each other for a long time, and Sheila apologizes, speaking that she merely did not expect him to have the same name as her friend. It is then that Rent asks if the vanished adventurer is Rent Faina, and Sheila asks how he knows this. Our hero answers that Lorraine commented about him, and Sheila thinks that he is from Rent's family, and our hero lies, saying yes, and that he is staying with her. Sheila reveals that she was aware that she had seen a man in clothes leave Lorraine's house, although she did not expect it to be him, since she had hopes that it was Rent himself. She warns that everything is fine with the form, and requests for him to wait while she finishes the registration. Upon withdrawing, Rent thinks that he acted well by saying that he is a family member. Since Lorraine is young, and he does not want her to get involved in strange rumors. The name Rent is very common in other countries, and it is not uncommon for an adventurer to have a strange aspect. But sincerely, if I saw this low-budget undead here, I would certainly be very suspicious. But the most important thing now is that he can start from zero once more. And Sheila delivers the identification, and warns him that now he is officially an Iron-class adventurer. A beautiful achievement there for him, and although she is worried, she requests for him to not try to die. And a time later, Rent returns to the labyrinth, and while walking, he hears screams of a creature. He asks himself if they would be goblins, but soon notes that it is some adventurers fighting against them. By the tone of the voices, they seem to be children, and upon approaching, he observes that it is a swordsman and a healer. Both are very young, probably novices, and while they fight, a slime appears, and the healer Laura takes charge of attacking it, while the swordsman neutralizes the goblin. Upon seeing both working very well in tandem, Rent departs much more tranquil, since in the old days he used to speak with the novices and teach them about the labyrinth. But now he is avoiding making contact due to his current appearance. While he walks, another adventurer passes by his side, but Rent decides to go directly to the hidden route before anyone finds it. He teleports to the zone where he defeated the giant skeleton, and mentions that information about the labyrinth is very well paid, especially when it comes to recently discovered areas. And if he explores on his own and forms a guild, it will certainly be a great achievement, or at least it will help him rise in ranking. It is then that he is transported to a sort of dormitory, and attempts to pick up the stuffed animal from the floor, but upon doing so, it crumbles. Upon looking at the bed, he observes that there is a skull lying there, and asks himself if someone lives in this labyrinth. However, upon trying to pick up a bouquet of flowers, a female voice stops him, asking what it is that he is doing in that location. Upon turning around, he observes that it is a woman, and she asks once more what the hell he is doing there. Rent, upon seeing her, has awareness that this woman is very dangerous, and answers like an adventurer that he is seeking something of value in that room. The girl answers that this is not very different from stealing. Apparently he is only wanting to die there, and there are things that not even she herself is capable of forgiving, and she does not want anyone to step into that location. The girl then prepares herself to attack him, and Rent does not intend to let himself be killed so easily. However, with a single attack, the poor guy ends up completely broken against the wall, and she prepares herself to attack him once more. But when Rent gets up, she observes his body better. He mentions that he did not end up that way on his own, and she ends up lowering her guard, and answers that this explains how he could arrive at that location. She then says that it was all a misunderstanding, and apologizes for having attacked him, although Rent thinks that in truth she almost killed him, in exchange for having burned his clothes. As an apology, she delivers her tunic, which is worth much more than everything he was wearing. We observe then that this girl is an elf, and Rent thinks that she no longer wants to kill him, since she mentioned the misunderstanding. The elf then speaks that he probably knows that that place is very special, and requests for him to keep the secret. That room is special to her for obvious reasons, and while Rent supposes that she does not want him to inform the guild about the location, she mentions that nobody will be able to enter there unless they are accompanied by him. But since he is an adventurer, she supposes that he does not want to return empty-handed, and for that reason, she delivers a map of Acacia. This map will certainly be very useful, and upon opening it, Rent observes that there is nothing inside. But the elf explains that this map registers the places through which he has already passed. With this they have an agreement, and she says she hopes that he has good health, although she admits that it is not the most appropriate moment to say this. Then she uses her magic and sends him back to the entrance of the dungeon. After a time, Rent meets with Lorraine and recounts everything that happened, and she thinks that perhaps he entered into a state of curse, although many strange things always happen to him, or they happen because he likes it. Upon examining the map, she verifies that it is not cursed, and that he can use it without problems, but Rent has no idea how to use it. Lorraine then answers that the object does not react to his magic, so she will have to use hers to see if something happened. Upon doing this, she shows in detail the labyrinth of the moon's reflection, and it is a map that shows all the places where he has already been. And Lorraine becomes quite surprised upon seeing it, finding it a marvel, and asks what is that mark that appears on the map. Rent is not very certain of what it is, but at that moment some arrows emerge, with the names Laura and Rise. Lorraine does not understand what that is, but Rent answers that they are a pair of novice adventurers that he saw on the previous day. Lorraine can hardly believe that he has a treasure of this magnitude, since this probably is of national level, since it can inclusive show the adventurers that he saw, and the exact location of where they are. She asks herself if he can add maps of other labyrinths, and Rent is not very certain, but attempts to test it. Upon imagining the labyrinth of the new moon, the map of Acacia changes, showing the map of that location, however incomplete. He remembers that the elf said that the map registers the places of the location through which he has already passed, which obviously means that it is not going to show the locations where its ancient owner had not been. Rent then requests for her to give a look at that tunic, since he is not in the mood to carry more curses, and Lorraine, upon examining it, answers that there is nothing wrong. Furthermore, he is already using it, and if it were cursed, he probably would already know. Judging by the appearance, it has a very high quality, possesses much magic defense, and not even she would manage to pierce it. Without doubt, it is much better than a conventional armor, and Rent thinks that he won the lottery, but Lorraine tells him to not think much about this. In first place, who is the woman who almost killed him? But Rent has no idea. He is only certain that she is very powerful. Based on her capability, he knows that woman is stronger than someone of the gold rank. Lorraine then understands why he was almost killed, but her curiosity is to know what the room he entered was like, because that would mean someone can create habitable rooms in the labyrinth. Rent confesses that the next day he intends to enter there once more, since the elf did not say he was forbidden to return. What she said was for him to never say anything to the guild, and this guy here is very clever, far too sharp. Lorraine asks if he believes she will hold the same opinion, because from what he told, it is obvious that woman does not want to speak with strangers, but Rent does not want to harbor any doubts, so he desires to speak with her once more. The next day, he finds the labyrinth of the moon's base, and thinks that ever since he found the hidden room with the dragon, his life has changed completely. Anyone would say he is an unlucky person, but he feels it is exactly the opposite, since he is achieving feats that only an adventurer of the mithril rank could accomplish. Upon entering the room where he found the dragon, he notices that the entrance to the secret room had disappeared, and when checking his map, he does not find any room. It is obvious the girl means for him to return, or at least not for the time being. On the other side, Sheila speaks with another adventurer, who asks if she knows something about Rent. The adventurer mentions that perhaps he is accompanying some traveler, and hopes that she warns him if she learns of anything. Sheila thinks that she ended up leaving everyone worried, since a lot of people learned to be an adventurer thanks to him. He taught her how to be a better employee for the guild, and she remembers the moment when Rent said he was not sure about being a good person, but that he would do anything for the mithril class. At that moment, Rent arrives at the guild, and startles her by appearing so suddenly, but Sheila apologizes for being distracted, and he responds for her not to worry. He announces that he wants to accept a quest, and upon reviewing it, she observes that he desires to collect orc meat, and there is plenty of time until the deadline, but she alerts him that orcs are extremely strong opponents, and he will have to defeat 3 to complete the mission. She says she does not recommend this job because he is at the iron rank, but Rent responds that he is aware of the dangers, and knows that orcs are strong, although she should not worry, since previously he defeated a few orcs. After some time, Rent returns to the guild, and informs that he has already defeated the 3 orcs, and he removes it from his pouch, and shows the meat he obtained. While thinking that a solo adventurer like him must rely on a magic pouch, in his case, he spent 5 years saving money to buy one, but it was definitely entirely worth it. Sheila states that they are very well packed and well preserved, and that certainly the client will be very satisfied, but she remains staring at Rent fixedly. He asks what happened, and Sheila asks for him to wait a moment, while the other adventurers observe him with a bit of apprehension, upon knowing that he defeated 3 orcs alone, since they had never seen him do that before. Rent feels that he is standing out too much, and that proverb, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered down," applies perfectly to his situation, even more so being an iron rank practitioner. Upon returning, Sheila delivers a document, while announcing that she spoke with her superior, and recommended that he take an advancement exam. This is the exam for him to advance to the bronze class, and they do not usually offer it so early, but she observes that he possesses a great potential. Rent feels that he could jump for joy, and gratefully he accepts the proposal. Upon returning home, he tells Lorraine about the advancement exam, although she already expected this. because she knows very well the strength of Rent. He is aware that all of this is largely thanks to the body he has now. But Lorraine responds that with that body he only has raw strength. The rest are entirely his skills that he developed. She asks what name he used to register at the guild. But upon hearing that he used the surname Vivi, she almost chokes on her coffee. If he used that surname with that name, people will suspect due to the proximity that both had. Although Rent confesses that he did it because he did not want people to think that a stranger was entering her house all the time. Upon listening to him, Lorraine becomes very moved and responds that he does not need to worry about her reputation, since she considers herself just a poor researcher who moved to that place after failing in the capital. Furthermore, she does not worry about what other people might think regarding her, but Rent states that she has already done so much for him, and he cannot cause trouble. Lorraine responds that the situation is extremely the opposite. She claims that this man cooks for her every day, washes her clothes, and cleans the house, doing practically all the domestic chores. One could say he is just any servant. Lorraine declares that she owes him more than he owes her, but Rent counters by saying that is not true, because if he remains human, it is thanks to her. In that case, Lorraine asks him to stay as long as he wishes, because he is already part of her family, and there is nothing wrong with helping family members. Rent then accepts her proposal, and the next day, upon entering the Adventurers Guild, one of the eccentric guys there questions him, and Rent announces that he is going to take the advancement exam. Sheila, upon seeing him, is surprised because she did not expect him to go so early. She assumed he would take some time to prepare for the exam, but Rent is very impatient to take it as quickly as possible. The young man is in a hurry. Furthermore, the next advancement exam would occur only several months from now, and he does not want to wait that long, and he is right. So at that moment, another adventurer arrives late for the evaluation, and Rent thinks that due to this delay he will lose some points, owing to the fact that people do not trust unpunctual adventurers like that one. The evaluator informs everyone that they are about to begin, and the first step will be the lottery. They will be approved by the guild and by the monster items, needing to demonstrate that they are already prepared to ascend to the bronze rank. Those who are approved in the theory will proceed to the practical exam, with the latter usually changing a lot. When Rent took it previously, he had to gather some herbs. The evaluator orders everyone to follow him to take the written exam. Rent observes that there are many more people than he expected, and he also notices that he encountered a healer whom he had seen before and her companion. For his part, her companion is taking the oral exam, because he knows neither how to read nor how to write. Many people do not possess this knowledge, but in the case of Rent, while growing up in his village, he learned to read and write. In addition to studying everything that was related to herbs, he did all of this because he thought that someday he would need it as an adventurer. This exam does not represent a challenge for him, because it is the second time he is taking it, and upon finishing, Sheila congratulates him because he obtained a maximum score. Rent asks what he will do in the practical exam, and she informs him that he will form a party with other people to carry out a job for the guild. Coincidentally, it falls upon him to form a party with Rena and Laura. He feels a bit of tension in the atmosphere while Laura introduces herself and explains that she is a mage and that she can also use healing magic, besides being in charge of the rear guard. This is the turn of Rena, who explains that she utilizes her energy to increase her strength, taking care of the vanguard, and Rent introduces himself to them. He says that he utilizes his sword and that he is capable of using magic and spiritual power. At that moment, the official in charge announces that they are going to perform a task for the guild. This task will be in the labyrinth of the new moon, and he distributes some maps and explains that their duty is to reach the designated point on the map. They have until dusk to reach their destination, and the adventurers think that it will be very easy to fulfill this task, while others ask if there is any restriction. However, they have no restriction. They are free to do whatever they want. Everyone will go to the same location, and the first party to arrive will receive a reward for the effort. But some adventurers seem to be demonstrating a bit of their bad side. They look quite hostile, and upon arriving at the entrance of the labyrinth of the new moon, many run to try to arrive first. Meanwhile, Rena asks Rent if he has ever entered the labyrinth of the new moon before. Rent responds yes, and Rena mentions that she has also been there, although Laura mentions that she has only been to the first floor of the labyrinth, which makes Rena feel a bit embarrassed, but that is not what is important right now. His first step is to reach the designated point. However, when trying to enter, Rent stops them and recommends caution. Laura asks what is wrong with the map that was delivered to them. But the detail is that this map is already about 15 years old. That is not a map one can rely on. Rent then goes to a merchant and requests a map, but the seller is simply a massive exploiter, as he asks for 2 silver coins for a piece of paper, but Rent contests this, stating that he only wants the map of the first floor and that it should not cost more than 5 bronze coins. The seller then accepts the deal, and Laura asks why he is not someone easy to deceive. Upon checking the maps, they observe that it is new and intense compared to what was delivered at the guild, as it shows places that changed and collapses that occurred inside the labyrinth. The most important thing is that it also shows the location of all the traps on the first floor, and with this in their possession, they would not lose the race by any means. The seller states that if they do not want to lose, it is better to leave it to this man who accompanies them, and Laura asks why the guild would try to deceive them, but Rent mentions that possibly the carriages that arrived also left them at the wrong location. An adventurer can never lower their guard, and the objective of this exam is exactly that, to see if there is anyone who possesses talent to be an adventurer. Rent thinks that this is something quite strange, but Rent states that the guild can sometimes be very cruel. Upon entering the dungeon, they encounter a group of skeletons, and Laura and Rena work in teamwork together to defeat them. While Rent observes that they are very good for being so young, possessing their roles well defined, but Rent helps them upon seeing that they are getting tired. While the youths wonder if there are always so many monsters on that floor, Rent begins to search for something that is attracting the creatures and finds in a pouch a special incense to attract monsters. He asks what on earth that is doing in that place, but very soon he will find out. Furthermore, further ahead an ambush awaits, and Laura mentions that monsters are not intelligent enough to execute ambushes, but what awaits them ahead are not monsters. They are a group of humans who are waiting to attack them. The youths are frightened at the thought that they must face other humans, but Rent asks them to wait for him, and he advances to meet the adventurers. Rent says that he is the one who should go ahead, and Rent, being very kind, takes the bald enemy and hurls him to be faced, while Rent evades the arrows of one adventurer and blocks the fireball of another. Rena observes that he is someone very impressive, and Rent quickly disposes of those two. Rena begins to see himself at a disadvantage, but Laura supports him, and they manage to counterattack the bald man. Upon neutralizing them, they tie them up and notice that they are also taking the exam, but that they were going to get rid of the competition. The evaluator said they could do whatever they wanted. Inside a labyrinth anything is possible, and monsters are not the only threat. Rent reminds them that an adventurer must never lower their guard and must always be attentive to everything around them. Rena leaves his pride aside and states that from that moment on they will follow Rent's orders. And as they advance and pass by a staircase, Rent mentions that someone will pass to collect them soon. Next, a hooded man passes by, who releases the other adventurers, and he mentions that the fellow in the mask seemed to know that the guild had sent them. They have no idea who it is, but the hooded man has an idea of who it could be, and perhaps his sister was right. At that moment, we see that Sheila meets with the guildmaster and asks what she can do for him. He responds that she needs to relax, because treating people with respect does not guarantee a promotion. He shares that he heard a strange rumor of a certain incident involving a certain Rent Vivi, the adventurer for whom she is responsible, and asks if by chance he did something wrong. The master responds that there are those who say he is a delinquent, and he appeared in Malt out of nowhere, but he is far too skilled. They know nothing about his past, and anyone with a bit of sense would be suspicious of him. Although many adventurers have a past, one must not ignore these accusations. He orders her to notify him immediately if she comes to know anything, while Sheila, a bit saddened, ends up accepting the order. Meanwhile, our dear Rent and the youths arrive at their objective and observe that that door is one of the boss rooms of that floor. To reach the goal, they must pass through it. Rent then asks if they have ever fought against a boss before, but they say they have no experience against bosses because Iron-class adventurers do not have permission to face them. Rent warns that if they are afraid, there is nothing wrong with avoiding a fight they know they cannot handle. But while Rena ponders whether they should enter or not, another group of adventurers arrives at the location, and they treat them with a very bizarre attitude and ask Laura if she would not like to join their group. Rent places himself in front of her and orders them to withdraw because his group arrived first. The other group becomes terrified, saying it was just a joke, but Rent responds that they do not have much of a sense of humor. The small group of cowards apologizes and says that they can enter first, but Rent is clever, so he yields the place to them because his group is going to rest. The adventurers open the door and enter the boss room, while Rena asks why he did that. Laura responds that perhaps Rent has some idea, and Rena asks if by chance he wants them to observe what a boss fight is like. Rent responds that in part yes, but that is not all. He also wants them to observe how the guild will not let them die. They should never lose the battle, as he already told them before that they should not feel ashamed for avoiding a fight they cannot win. And Rena responds that he is right, but feels that if he flees at that moment, he will never be able to be a true adventurer. He asks Laura if she wants to accompany him, and she says that obviously yes, while Rent observes that they have already made the decision, and he notes that a defeated adventurer becomes weak, and when that occurs, many usually abandon the trade. But Rent did not flee because his instinct urges him to keep moving forward, and thus our dear group enters the boss room, and upon entering the interior of the dungeon, they observe that the boss is a huge slime. They do not intend to end up like the guys from before, so they are determined to inform the guild about their victory. Although Rent did not expect to have to defeat the boss, since in this exam it is not necessary to do so. His plan was for the other candidates to defeat it, although it is also good to impose some challenges upon oneself like that from time to time. The youths leap to the attack, while Rent warns them that they must destroy its core. He knows that the two are more than capable of defeating a slime on their own. They only must increase the power of their magic attacks, since to defeat it they will not be able to rely on their physical attacks. Laura is capable of using high-power fire magic, although she needs a certain amount of time to be able to prepare it. Before entering, the youths had planned their strategy and Rena would be the one in charge of blocking the boss's attacks, but Rent asks to be the one in charge of blocking them. In their fight, Laura requests that Rena help Rent so that she can charge her attack. They then take charge of blocking its advances, and once the power is charged, Laura launches a large fire magic that brings down the boss and quickly destroys its core to prevent it from approaching. They are joyful for having managed to defeat it. Although Rena observes that Rent is doing strange things, he reveals that the fluids of the slimes are very valuable, and he recommends that they also gather some. And if they divide it, there will be 1 silver coin left for each one. The youths listen to his advice, but while they gather them, the others from the Adventurers Guild run to arrive at the goal earlier. Rena becomes alert, but Laura reassures him because she already knew that there was a trap ahead. People usually lower their guard when they are right before the goal, and Rent confesses that the important thing is not that they arrived earlier. Rena asks what he refers to, and Laura thinks that arriving first does not imply that they are approved. She remembers that the guild did not tell them to arrive first to be approved. They only must reach the designated point, mentioning the matter of the reward only so that they would think it was a race. And Rent did not care about letting the other adventurers pass, not even when they were in the boss room. Rena ends up feeling foolish, and Rent reminds them that their only task is simply to complete their mission before the deadline. And if they do not think for themselves on how to solve their problems, they will never be true adventurers. Upon leaving the boss room, they are received by a guild assistant who informs them that they are the first one, although the others do not believe it until she shows her identification. Immediately afterward, she delivers some badges to them and informs them that they must show them at the guild to be able to ascend to the bronze rank. Rena asks about the supposed reward, and the assistant delivers some potions and some sheaths to be able to store them. Before returning, Rent asks if they could deviate a bit from the path before returning to the guild and goes with the youths to explore the second floor. Upon entering, it is intense to see that it is a completely different panorama from the first floor. Rent mentions that labyrinths escape human understanding, but they are already about to step into this new world thanks to their new rank. Rena asks if they can explore a bit, although Rent says that it is a bad idea because the exam will end once they return to the guild. Upon returning to the city, they are exhausted because they encountered many traps, and upon returning the badges, Sheila congratulates them, and Rena asks if they are already in the bronze rank. However, at that moment, Sheila's brother arrives and delivers a report. He informs them that they have been observing them during the entire exam, and although the youths had no idea about it, this is due to the fact that they have to verify their personalities, and if they do not meet the requirements, they would not advance them, even if they had passed. But since everything is in order, the youths passed their advancement level. Rena and Laura are very content and feel that it was worth it, even though their parents were against it. Sheila mentions that what they said really worries her, and Rent is already of the bronze class again, and before that, he thanks the youths for all the help. But they respond that it is exactly the opposite because they learned a lot thanks to him. Now they are true adventurers. Laura has intentions for him to join their party, but she is aware that this is something impossible. because his objective is very distinct from theirs. She realized this, and it was for that reason that he taught them everything he could in the labyrinth, so that they could develop on their own. They hope in the future to be able to form a party once more, and upon withdrawing, Sheila mentions that they are very kind youths, and Rent feels as if he were their father, since those two made him feel at home. Sheila requests that he accompany her because she must ask him a few questions. She apologizes because she is aware that the guy is exhausted, but he is also intelligent enough to know what she intends to ask. Rent asks if she is going to punish him for what he did, although Sheila says that she is the one who asks the questions. Rent responds that if that is the case, he will not return to that guild and decides to leave. But Sheila stops him and reveals that she only wants to know what happened to him. She takes him into the interior of the guild, while Rent thinks that he just wants to run away. But he noticed that she was very worried about her old friend, and he cannot leave her like that. In a room, he states that he is involved in a big problem, and does not want the guild to be involved. Sheila confesses that she has not yet informed the guild about who he really is. First, she was not completely sure and wanted to see him with her own eyes. She only told the one who was watching them in the labyrinth, but since it is her brother, he will keep it a secret. She requests that he tell what happened to him, and to give a guarantee that she will not reveal his secret. She shows a magic pact, and there it shows that if she reveals anything, unfortunately she will have to leave the guild, travel to a country where slavery is legal, and do the paperwork to be someone's slave. Rent thought the same about the guild. She is simply taking everything to the extreme, but Sheila confesses that she wants to help him, not because of being part of the guild. She feels that she is a better person thanks to him, and although he does not notice, many people also feel that way. Rent observes that she is willing to sacrifice a lot for him and signs the contract to tell her, although he decides, instead of that, to show what he really is. Sheila is shocked upon seeing him, and Rent wonders if she regrets it. But she says she does not regret it, and if he suffers from something, she wants to know why and how it was that he ended up this way. It is then that Rent reveals that now he is a monster. To be exact, he is an undead. He understands the anguish of listening to all of this and asks if she believes she can help him. He declares that he does not intend to attack anyone, although it is another matter whether she believes him or not. When he is about to leave, Sheila stops him and says that she believes in what he said, and she knows that he is not going to attack anyone, since he is a good person and would never do that. Little does she know that he has already attacked someone, but it was unintentionally, and in the end he ended up having a better appearance thanks to that. Continuing, the youths from before and she herself owe much to him, and she is willing to help him however possible. She requests that he tell what is going on between him and the guild, because she will do everything to be able to help him. And upon arriving home, he talks with Sheila, who apologizes but says she insisted with Rent that she wanted to speak with her. Lorraine responds that she is an unusual guest and asks Rent if by chance he has already made a move on her. He responds that he has not touched her yet, but that she already knows the truth about him. In that case, she says to come in, but warns that the house is quite dirty, and poor Rent asks how that is possible, since he cleaned everything before leaving. Lorraine goes straight to the point, and she asks how much she knows. Sheila responds that he is a monster, but that he does not want to attack anyone, and she is quite surprised to learn that Sheila already knows everything, and even so decided to come there. Lorraine states that she is someone very innocent, and Sheila asks what she refers to. Lorraine says that Rent is an undead, and that she herself does not have a very good reputation. So thinking about it, what could happen to a young woman who enters the house of a witch and an undead? She then begins to terrify the girl, while frightening her, saying that under normal conditions she would put her in a pot to make a stew out of her and eat her. Sheila begins to laugh, because everyone knows that Lorraine is a wonderful researcher. But she knows that this is what the girl tells everyone, since in reality, on full moon nights, she dedicates herself to searching for the blood of young maidens, since their blood leaves her skin soft, and she wants by all means to scare poor Sheila. And at that, there is a moment of tension, and Rent observes that Lorraine, despite having her in front of her, does not see Sheila as a person, and will finish her off depending on her answer. But Sheila says that she understands perfectly, and in that case, they decide to have dinner together because it is already late. She looks at Rent's face, as if telling him to go to the kitchen right away. Upon finishing dinner, Sheila mentions that it was not a lie what people said about his food. Everything was delicious. Rent responds that he learned to cook in his homeland, and Lorraine is very glad to have him as a slave, meaning companion, since he cooks, does the housework, and does everything else. All of this for the small price of a few drops of blood. Sheila notices that he is a species of vampire, though of a low rank, Lorraine, curious, asks if they carried out some type of pact, and Rent responds yes, and that she will not reveal his identity. But Sheila alerts them that lately he has been drawing attention, and there are many novice adventurers who disappeared throughout the kingdom, and the guild thinks that it might be a matter of serial kidnappings, because if it had been the monsters, they would at least have left their belongings. Lorraine understands that they are suspecting Rent, because he acts in a very suspicious manner, and Sheila explains that in truth he does not behave as if he were a novice, which makes envious people easily spread rumors. Rent mentions that now the result is that Lorraine is envious of him, and Lorraine warns him that this is not good at all, as he finds himself in a very delicate position. Rent announces that if the situation is that bad, he can stop going to the labyrinth for a while. Sheila asks how much time he is talking about. He responds that he can absent himself for about 3 days or so. Lorraine says that this is nothing, so Rent suggests that it could be 4 days. The next day we see Rena and Laura, who are at the bulletin board looking for some good quest, while Sheila observes them from the second floor. The guildmaster rejoices upon seeing the novices, and mentions to Sheila that he learned that Rent Vivi was also promoted. Sheila responds that his technique and his personality represent no problem, and the guildmaster mentions that speaking of Rent, it has been a long time since he knows about the whereabouts of Rent Faina. He wanted to hire him for the guild when he retired, but he never saw him again. Sheila goes down to attend to some novices, and mentions that the new Rent is also a great adventurer. 4 days later we see that the beautiful Lorraine is resting in the morning, while poor Rent leaves home early to work. She mentions that he must not have gone to the dungeon, since they agreed that he would only go after the matter of the kidnappings was cleared up. But this guy is incapable of staying still without doing anything, which is why he goes in search of his new sword. And while he tests the sword, he says that it turned out excellent, and the blacksmith confesses that he carried out improvements, since he knows all of his habits. With it, he can use both magic and spiritual energy and divinity itself. He asks for Rent to test it, and upon doing so, he observes that Rent now is much stronger than before. His mana has much more power, and upon seeing that his spiritual energy increased, the blacksmith is impressed, but at the moment when he tests his divinity, he is unable to believe that Rent has become so strong in this short time. Even from the logs that he cut with the divinity, new branches sprouted, and he thinks that certainly this is due to some effect of his divinity. Rent is very satisfied with his new sword, but the blacksmith asks how he is capable of using divinity, when it is supposed that this technique is only given by the gods. Rent confesses that a long time ago he repaired an abandoned temple. He only did it because he felt he should do it, and he does not even remember which god the temple belonged to, but he received a blessing after that, and he thinks that probably it was some god of a low rank. Altaringer requests that he let him keep those logs, since he is curious to know if they will grow with the divine power. Rent sees no problems with that, and asks if he can continue practicing. The blacksmith Altaringer responds that there are no problems, but asks what he intends to do now, since he tested his 3 abilities. Rent confesses that he wants to test his 3 abilities together, and that is madness. The blacksmith places another log for him to practice, and asks if he knows about the fusion of mana and spirit. He explains that it is a technique that brings magic and spiritual techniques to their maximum, allowing them to be used at the same time. The detail is that one needs to be very good at controlling it, because if he fails, his body would explode. But Rent is not going to back down. In any case, an explosion will not be enough to destroy this body, and the blacksmith delivers another new sword so that he can practice with it, since if he breaks it, it will not be a big loss compared to the one he already manufactured. He warns that with that one he will not be able to use divinity, as it is cheaper than his new sword, but he will be able to practice this new method. Upon wielding it, he begins to imbue his mana into the sword to then place spiritual energy into the other. But upon doing this, he feels a great weight across his entire body. He feels as if he were trying to place something into a sword that is already full. He cannot continue enduring it and releases charges of power, completely disintegrating the log. The blacksmith recommends that he not add divinity to what he is trying to do, because it is something very dangerous, but Rent does not think about stopping and tries to fuse the 3 energies, since this needs to become even more powerful to reach the mithril class. Altaringer becomes frightened upon seeing that Rent is forcing himself to fuse the 3 energies and shouts that he must stop because the sword will not endure it. Despite this, Rent manages to fuse them to a certain point and even launches a very powerful attack. But the sword disintegrates and the energy from before converts into a sphere. Rent apologizes to Altaringer, although he responds that it is fine, because divinity removes impurities and returns everything to its original state, and that is why he cannot use a normal weapon, since it breaks the elemental bonds. The sword he manufactured supports the energy, but after seeing what happened, he does not believe it will endure what he just did. That is why he only recommends using the fusion of two energies. That way it is guaranteed that it will not break. Rent recalls how powerful the elf from the labyrinth was, the one he was unable to face, and asks Alcheringa what he could do against a rival he cannot defeat with this. The blacksmith understands that he wants him to make more swords, and the detail is that Rent is not in a very good financial situation, and the blacksmith knows this. A bit later, while walking through the city, Rent thinks that if he truly wants to be of the mithril rank, he will need to obtain good equipment, and for that, he needs a lot of money. At that moment, they encounter the discussion between the adventurer and a youth who wants him to perform a job. The adventurers refuse because they do not want to perform jobs that are not directly linked to the guild, so that they can avoid complications. Rent intervenes in the discussion and gives a silver coin to the bearded man so that he withdraws, leaving him to speak with the youth. The man leaves content, while the boy becomes nervous upon seeing the strange appearance of Rent. He says that he is an adventurer, and that he does not intend to accept his job, but wants to listen to him. The youth requests that he please defeat the Lord of the Lake, and upon hearing this, Rent becomes quite curious. The youth takes him in his cart to the place, but on the way, Rent thinks that both the reward and the job are quite problematic. He recalls the moment when he brought Rinto to Lorraine's house so that he could tell everything. He belongs to the village of Toksu, and in that place they perform a very peculiar festival, since once a year, they offer a beautiful young woman overflowing with mana as a sacrifice, or at least that is what the legend says, which was transformed into a festival with the objective of saving the village. But while they were celebrating a festival, the Lord of the Lake actually appeared and devoured a girl. After that, he began to demand even more sacrifices, and many young women died in that village. The next on the list of sacrifices is his little sister, and he begs for help. Those present, upon listening, are surprised and look at one another. Rinto, more than wanting to kill the Lord of the Lake, desires to save his younger sister, and therefore Rent does not necessarily need to face the Lord of the Lake. But there is something that does not make much sense to him. Upon arriving at the village, he notices that it is very quiet, and Rinto shares that previously there was more activity, despite it being small. But ever since the Lord of the Lake appeared, everyone is exhausted and hides in their houses, sheltering their children. Rent observes that some doors possess certain marks. It turns out that those marked are the next to sacrifice their daughter to the Lord of the Lake. Rent asks if it was the Lord of the Lake that placed the mark, but Rinto responds no. The most probable thing is that it was a kelpie that serves him, and Rent is surprised to hear him speak of a kelpie, even more so if it is a servant, because they are very powerful monsters. At that moment, his little sister appears, named Eli. She opens the door and her brother introduces Rent, stating, contentedly, that he will take charge of saving her. But she pulls him inside the house, irritated, and reprimands him because she had already told him many times not to keep speaking with strangers. She says that certainly Rent is deceiving him, because he has the appearance of a very eccentric type. Although Rinto mentions that he seems to be a good person, Rent listens to all of this and states that he feels quite uncomfortable. Soon Elise opens the door to express gratitude for him having listened to her foolish brother, but states that the Toksu festival is a very ancient tradition, and he cannot simply request for them to release her. She requests that he take note of what her brother said and leave, but Rent responds that Rinto hired him, and only he has the right to annul the pact. Elise, without further options, states that he can stay at his house, but requests that he not interfere in the festival, because she is glad to be a sacrifice. At night, Rinto prepares Rent's room, and he mentions that Elise will not leave the village, even if they asked. He asks what Rinto intends to do, and he, desperate, responds that he will do whatever is necessary for his little sister. For this reason, he implores Rent to defeat the Lord of the Lake. The next day, while walking through the village, he approaches a group to ask for information. However, the children run away in fear upon seeing him. The guy, looking like death incarnate itself, makes it impossible for them not to be afraid. A local merchant states that he had never seen him before, and asks if he is there on account of the festival. Rent responds, more or less. The merchant states that he arrived at a rather bad moment, because the Lord of the Lake is furious, and at that, Rinto calls him to eat. And before going, the merchant recommends that he forget about the festival and leave, and upon reuniting with Rinto, Rent asks if those merchants are usually in that location. Rinto responds that they are usually there, and that they are very kind, which leaves Rent a bit thoughtful. In the afternoon, while they prepare to deliver Elias as a sacrifice, they ask for her to forgive them. They believed that her brother would take her and escape with her, because he was asking everyone in the village to cancel the festival. Elias responds that she prays for this not to infuriate the Lord of the Lake, or otherwise, he will destroy the entire village. The elder responds that this is not to be wondered at, since Rinto is someone very worried about her and about the future of the village. The young woman then begins to weep and mentions that her brother is a fool, and after a while, Rent reunites with her and requests to speak a bit in private. However, she requests for him to leave, as the sacrifice must remain alone. Rent responds that then he will stay there and take charge of everything, because there is always a way to resolve things. He says this with great seriousness and recommends that she also begin to fight. Elias counters, asking how she could fight if no human can defeat the Lord of the Lake, but Rent reveals that he and her brother will take charge of everything. She responds that this is impossible, and Rent replies, requesting for her not to do anything to sadden her brother. He is her only family, and she must keep fighting as long as there is hope. After saying this, he withdraws, and Elias, after reflecting, thanks him. The villagers initiate a ritual of sacrifice and ask forgiveness from Elias, claiming that it must save the village. They say that she must fulfill her duty, and upon arriving at the point, both Rent and Rinto and Elias climb onto certain places to reach the center of the lake. At that, a very thick mist covers everything, and the orb that Elias carries begins to illuminate. At that moment, the great Lord of the Lake appears, revealing himself to be a monstrous and giant octopus. Elias begs for him to protect the village, since she will sacrifice herself for that, but Rent tells her to stop, because she is just wasting her time. Rent throws the orb into the water, because it is nothing more than a decoy, and leaps into the water, leaving everyone surprised. As the guy manages to walk upon it, he thinks that it is very good to have an alchemist friend, and sets out to see the true identity of the supposed Lord of the Lake. He mentions that krakens usually stay at the bottom of the ocean and do not spit fire, discarding that idea. Upon approaching and attacking, he discovers that the giant octopus was nothing more than a projection created by a mage, while another launched fire spells. He observes that it is the group of merchants, and one of them states that he should have listened when they told him to leave the village. Rent responds that he did not expect the Lord of the Lake to be a fat and ugly merchant, and they begin to attack him. But Rent manages to repel the arrows with great ease, and leaps to the boat to defeat all the bandits. Upon emerging from the mist, he tells the youths that everything is under control, and they ask where that boat came from, and Rent reveals everything that happened in the morning. They recount to the rest of the villagers that that group was posing as the Lord of the Lake and demanding sacrifices. Rent informed them that he noticed something suspicious, because a venerated monster does not usually lose control like that out of nowhere. One of the villagers asks the bandit where the rest of the girls are, but since he does not respond, Rent pressures him, and he confesses that they are alive. The plan was simply to sell them as slaves in other places, and he delivers the location so that they do not kill him. The rest of the villagers run desperately to rescue them, and Rent informs Rinto that with this his job is done. He prepares to leave, and the girl who previously wanted him to depart now tries to prevent his exit. But Rent responds that they are waiting for him in Malt, and he cannot stay to wait. Rinto thanks them for saving the village and his sister, and when he is about to leave, Elias leaps on top of him and gives him a kiss as an expression of gratitude. Rinto asks what on earth she is doing, but she responds that she is merely thanking him, and Rent accepts her gratitude. He heads back to Malt, while thinking that those bandits have no connection to the kidnappings of the city's adventurers. Upon arriving, he informs Lorraine about his mission, and expresses gratitude for the magic object that allowed him to walk upon the water. Although he confesses that he would have liked for the Lord of the Lake to have been real, to be able to examine it, surely it would drop some of its very good items. She mentions that, by the look of it, he stole the heart of a girl in distress, but Rent responds that it was just a thank you, and that she will forget about it sooner or later, as that is how the life of adventurers functions. Lorraine, very serious, responds that the gods should punish him a little, and already at the Adventurers Guild, Rent observes that they are offering a bronze coin as payment for a job, which is practically working for free. However, certainly many will accept, because they do not work only for money. Sometimes they just want to help other people. Although the guild would not accept jobs like defeating the legendary Lord of the Lake, Sheila asks if he obtained something, a good job, but Rent states that she must not worry, thinking that he will go to the labyrinth, as he promised to wait a while. Apparently, nobody wants to accept the poorly remunerated job, since it is practically slave labor. because they must gather a dragon blood flower that blooms in poisonous swamps. Besides the tale that a dragon fell in love with a human woman and its blood transformed into this flower. And for a copper coin, nobody is crazy enough to get involved in this hornet's nest. Nobody except our dear Rent, who surely is going to accept this quest. Sheila shares that the woman who receives this flower will be loved eternally, although they want to use it to make a medicine, and she reveals that the job is a request from children of an orphanage who need it to be acquired. Upon hearing this, Rent loses no time in accepting this job, since the guy has a very kind heart and there is no way to abandon those little children there. Rent heads to the orphanage, and upon arriving, he notices that everything is worse than he expected. He uses a slime liquid to carry out repairs and decides to knock on the door before committing another error. A little girl receives him and informs him that the director is not available and that he must return later. But upon seeing Rent, she does not like it. He says that he is an adventurer who accepted the job, although the little girl thought that he was a debt collector with that appearance. Upon entering, the little girl requests the rest of the children to behave and informs them that he is an adventurer. They become quite excited and ask if he is someone very strong, but the girl from before reprimands them, because she had already said many times that adventurers are dangerous barbarians and they must maintain their distance from them. She immediately afterward apologizes to Rent because she was not referring to him, but he says that she should not worry, since in reality adventurers usually are quite aggressive and the best thing is to be careful indeed. Rent recommends to the children that they stay away from adults with strange appearances, although he is the least indicated to say that. With this bizarre appearance of his here, I think the children are already going to stay away from him right away. But anyway, the girl apologizes once more and Rent responds that to trust is good. But this means that she grew up very happy. The girl responds that the director is a wonderful woman and Rent says that she can treat him informally, although children must treat adults with formality. But he does not care much. He then states his name and says that he is of the bronze rank, which surprises the girl quite a bit, because she had understood that they sent someone of the iron class. She then introduces herself as Elise, and the one who made the request for the job was her. Rent then goes straight to the point and mentions that the blood flowers are not easy to obtain. They are rarely seen in shops, and the ones that are found are extremely expensive. Despite everything, she needs one, and Rent agrees to help her. But he needs to know everything related to the job, and Elise agrees but requests to keep it a secret. We see then that in reality, the director of the orphanage, named Lillian, is ill, and she thinks that Rent is there to clean the attic of the orphanage, which despite being small, contains some monsters, and she cannot permit the children to place themselves in danger. Rent understands that Elise wants to cure Lillian's ailment, who possesses a disease called malacmula. As a priestess, she can use divinity, but since she is not that strong, each time she uses it, a backlash causes her body to accumulate harmful energy. She will not die immediately, but Elise wants to prevent that from happening. Rent did not know of the existence of this, but Elise recalls that a healer examined her and stated that it was this, and that the cure is only with the blood of a holy maiden or a special medicine. In conclusion, they need the dragon blood flower to create the medicine, and Lillian is not aware of her disease because if she knew, she would probably leave the high priestess in charge and depart from the orphanage. Thinking that her ailment is the will of God, Rent decides to face the task before that occurs, and Elise is surprised because she did not expect anyone to accept the job, and was thinking of becoming an adventurer to obtain it by herself in case nobody helped her. Rent mentions that she would not have time to learn to be an adventurer, since this elderly lady would probably die before that. He then promises that he will obtain the flower, but first he has to clean the attic that they mentioned previously, and upon going down, he tells Elise that it is not necessary for her to follow him, as it is not fun to see how he fares against monsters, but he delivers a dagger to her for her safety, since he knows that she wants to be an adventurer. As they advance, they observe several monsters, and they are enormous. Their leader separates from the rest and leaps to the attack, but Rent blocks. But in a second attack, he ends up being bitten. But the rat becomes infected and changes color. Rent feels quite strange and orders it to turn 3 times in circle. The rat obeys, and the girl is surprised to see that it complied with the order. Upon finishing the cleanup, he returns home, where Lorraine asks why on earth he has a black rat riding on his shoulder. He says that it is his little friend from the orphanage. Although he omits a good part of the story, Lorraine did not expect that. Just like vampires, he could control and create servants, since she did not test giving his blood to other creatures, and Rent asks if he can keep it, and she sees no problem at all because After all, she already has an undead living in her house. She does not think a small rat will change the scenario much, but it will have to pay rent with blood and fur samples, since she wants to continue doing her crazy experiments. Besides performing some biological studies, and the poor rat is quite nervous. Upon approaching her finger, it bites, and Lorraine mentions that its temperament is just like its father's. She asks what he plans to call it, although, as we already know, Rent does not have much imagination, so he makes a pause. Soon, he decides on a name, and Lorraine states that it is a very pathetic name, so she goes ahead and says that the rat's name will be Edel, which is much better than the other. The rat ends up liking the name, since it means noble in the ancient language, and Rent says that it is alright, and Lorraine asks if he can understand it, although he only knows what the creature is thinking. Lorraine tells the rat that it must remember the name was given by her, and Rent feels a bit of jealousy, since the master of that rat is him. Some time later, while Edel rests, Rent organizes his things. Since ever since he became an undead, he is unable to sleep. He thought about staying inside the dungeon and not leaving for a long period, but people would suspect an adventurer who does not rest, and he stays there completely bored during all the nights, until Lorraine knocks on the door, and upon entering, she says that since the rat was leaving very early tomorrow, they should eat something before departing. Upon seeing the food, Rent is surprised and thinks that probably a deluge is going to fall, because Lorraine cooked. Meanwhile, we see that they placed pants and a cloak on Edel. Lorraine recalls that the Tarrasque swamp is very dangerous, and knows that if he is heading there, it is because it is the only swamp in the region where that flower exists. She does not want him to go alone, because for a bronze rank adventurer, it is better to go in a party. But Rent says that he does not intend to fight, since he purchased holy water to frighten away the Tarrasque. Lorraine warns that this does not always work, but Rent goes with faith, and upon tasting the food, he says that it is delicious, because it has been a long time since he enjoyed a good meal. But that is because Lorraine placed a drop of her blood in the food, and Rent is enchanted, and Edel is completely speechless. On the following day, Rent heads towards the swamp, and upon arriving, the coachman warns that he can only take him to this point, but will return to pick him up at night if he survives. As he enters, he notices that Edel is also not affected by the poison, although if there is no other option, he will purify it with divinity. In that place there are animals and plants that only appear there, which is why they built a bridge to cross it faster, because nobody wants to step into a poisonous swamp. And upon crossing the bridge he is ambushed by a group of goblins. They are much stronger than the ones in the dungeons, because the wild beasts know that Rent is a group and uses weapons. But with the current strength of our hero, they do not represent any problem. He tells Edel that next time he will also work, because Rent is the master in this relation. Being an undead creature, after all, is not so bad, since the poison does not affect him, and if he could change his physical form, he would not mind staying like this forever. But right then he steps on a broken board and falls into the swamp. He observes that that rat, completely shameless, jumped and left him all alone. So he is attacked by a sea monster, while the arrogant Edel merely watches from a distance, while enjoying some nuts. This rat here is far too cunning, and upon finishing, Rent wonders if all the servants of vampires are like this. Meanwhile, Sheila goes to eat at Lorraine's house and is startled to learn that she placed blood in the food. Lorraine confesses that it was only a drop and in Rent's cup, and Sheila counts that at the guild they know what happened in Toxo, since they began to transfer those evil merchants from before. But no matter how much they asked the villagers, they refused to give the names of the adventurers who helped them. Lorraine says that this is why she wanted to speak with her instead of Rent, because she knows that he would not wish to speak with the guild, and she explains that Rent, despite being a hero, feels that they would suspect him in the exact same way. And when speaking about the kidnappings and about so many unexpected things that he does, in reality he thinks things through very well. And Lorraine knows this because she has known him for a very long time. And Sheila asks if that being the case, she must know the reason why he desperately wants to become a mithril class adventurer. Lorraine responds that she does not know, because Rent never spoke about this topic with her. Despite this, adventurers do not ask about the past of one another. She does not want to get involved anymore, but she already knows Sheila. She asks if Lorraine is not worried about him, because in the work that he is currently doing, he is possibly going to face a Tarrasque. Lorraine mentions that she finds it curious that the guild insists that they accept only jobs in accordance with their strength, and Sheila responds that they already evaluated him before, but she cannot help but worry. Lorraine says that she has to be calmer, because she trusts the opinion of the professionals at the guild, and knows that Rent will emerge victorious from his battle. However, Rent is running for his life because the holy water that he bought did not work, so he is pursued by an enormous Tarrasque. Until arriving at a cliff, he has no other option but to fight, and the Tarrasque attacks him with poison, but it has no effect, and Rent strikes it with his sword. But the armor of the creature is far too strong, and he feels that he cannot defeat it with only his mana. He combines his mana with spiritual energy, but that also does not work. However, at that moment, Edel leaps to the attack, and Rent is completely shocked. He is seeing that little rat using its divinity, and Edel enters the inside of the Tarrasque and attacks it from within. However, the monster spits him out, and Rent rebukes him for using his divinity without permission. Nevertheless, at least that gave him an idea. Using his divinity, he runs towards the monster, attacks its neck, and with absolute force rips off its head. Because the Tarrasque is weak against divine attacks, he then stores the body in his magic bag to prevent his strength from being exposed. While advancing, he mentions that he has very bad luck. Although thanks to Edel, now he knows how to defeat a Tarrasque easily. At least selling its parts will yield a good amount of money. Upon crossing the boat, he is surprised to see a large quantity of blood flowers, and notices that his power is purifying that location. He took advantage of the opportunity to take a few more, although he senses a presence, and upon turning around, he observes that it appears to be an elf. Rent says that it is not normal to see people in that location, but the elf mentions that he is insinuating that Rent is also not normal, since at least he is using a magic object that protects him from the poison, and also possesses a holy water of high quality. Unlike Rent, who was deceived by that cheap holy water, the guy took water from the sewer, put it in a small bottle, and sold it to Rent. That is a complicated situation. Entering a Tarrasque swamp alone is a very difficult task, and the elf asks Rent if there is any problem with harvesting some of the dragon flowers. He responds that there is no problem at all, but remains alert to any movement, because a distracted adventurer is an incomplete adventurer. The elf mentions that the dragon flowers are for his lady, who is very sick and needs treatment, and he says that although he wished to stay and care for her, he cannot, since he must harvest the flowers. However, he is lucky to meet him, because they can request commissions for these flowers. He asks what his name is, and Rent introduces himself, informing that he is a bronze rank adventurer, and astonishes the poor elf, since he must be very strong to start in this swamp. A simple bronze adventurer would not be able to do it. And the elf introduces himself as Isaac, and says that he would love to rely on him for future commissions involving these flowers, since his lady needs them. Shortly after, he says goodbye, and a bit later, already in the city, Rent lies to the carriage driver, speaking that in reality he is not a bronze rank adventurer, but rather of mithril class, and he uses his magic bag to conceal himself, which completely surprises the coachman. He requests that on the next shift, he hire him again, and he will guarantee a good discount. Upon arriving at the guild, he returns the magic bag to Sheila, and asks her to separate the creature into parts and sell it quickly, and she is greatly surprised upon realizing that he defeated a Tarrasque all by himself. Rent asks her to keep it a secret, because there are many adventurers present, but he had already drawn the attention of everyone. They try to be more discreet, and the two of them go together to see the butcher, to sell the complete body of the Tarrasque. Upon arriving, Rent shows the monster, leaving the butcher surprised to see that it is a very large specimen, and most importantly, it was killed with a single blow. Furthermore, it is in excellent condition and fresh, due to the large amount of poison that was expelled. Rent asks if it can be sold at a good price, and the butcher responds that it is worth a lot, while she is astonished by the power that Rent managed to acquire, since now he is simply capable of defeating a monster of this magnitude alone. And she is very proud of his advancement, and is certain that he will become even stronger. Upon leaving, Rent mentions that he will return to the orphanage, and expresses gratitude for her having accompanied him until so late. But before they separate, Sheila congratulates him for having become so strong, because with his current strength, she feels that he could be a silver rank adventurer, which leaves Rent thoughtful. To him, it is very strange to be someone so strong, but still, having to admit that he is strong, he feels strange, since all of this is possible thanks to the fact that he is an undead creature. He wishes in this manner to return to being human, but thinks that this could cause him to lose his strength and return to being how he was before, which makes him feel insecure about what he truly desires. On the following day, our dear Rent goes to the orphanage to deliver the flowers, but when he tries to knock on the door, the handle breaks once again, although it is nothing that Slime's super glue cannot solve. At that moment, Eliza arrives and asks how everything is going, and is surprised to perceive that Rent has already completed the job. A bit later, everyone gathers and becomes emotional, since it is very rare to see these flowers so well prepared, due to the fact that the monster of the swamp does not allow humans to manage to harvest them. With such an excellent preparation, Wilfred, the healer, and Norm, the herbalist, are happy and impressed by the high quality of the flowers, so much so that they will be able to produce a medicine to cure the epidemic very quickly. Norm asks Elias if he can keep some flowers in case there are any left over, since he desires to utilize them to help more people. She responds that there is no problem at all, but Rent intervenes, asking if they want more of those flowers, and the youth responds that obviously yes, and they could help many. Rent hands over several and asks if that is sufficient. The young men cannot believe that Rent possesses so many flowers, but they say that there is no way to pay for them. But Rent speaks that payment is not necessary, but hopes that they use them wisely. The youth say that they are eternally grateful, because with this they will be able to save many lives. Although they have no way to pay, they promise to help him with anything that he needs in the future. In this other scene, we see how Rent is finalizing the mission, and Elias finishes filling out the form, and she is very grateful, because if it were not for him, she would have had to become an adventurer and gone out in search of the flower, although most probably it would have been useless, and she would lose her life on the way. But now, thanks to him, she is even more motivated to become an adventurer, just like him, to be able to help people. She mentions that she has nothing with which she can help him, but Rent says that it is true, because even he requires help on several occasions, and when he needs assistance, he will definitely look for her. At that moment, his little rat Edel arrives and informs him of everything. Rent then warns Elias that Edel's pack will protect her from the small monsters that appear in the attic, and she is very content and happy, expressing gratitude for all his help. Rent mentions that if she wishes to become an adventurer, it is best that she begins to train right away. At the Adventurers Guild, Elias takes classes, and including himself, he can give her some training when he has nothing to do. He also advises her to train in magic. However, Elias responds that the problem is the money, since she does not count on the necessary resources. Training only with the sword is already expensive, and now with magic, it will cost an arm and a leg. She feels that she will have to discard this idea, but our dear hero offers Lorraine, and without her permission, he already places her to train, because according to him, she has nothing better to do. But Elias does not like the idea very much, since that would be abusing goodwill, and Rent proposes to lend the money without interest, and when she becomes an adventurer, she will be able to return it. So Elias accepts, but on the condition of paying him with interest, and Rent returns to Lorraine's house, where he relates everything that happened. She is very irritated, since now, against her will, she is going to have an apprentice. He always says that she is not doing anything, when she speaks the truth, and Rent apologizes, and responds that in reality, it is that he does not understand nor talk much with young girls. But Lorraine speaks that she is a young girl, and that he knows her very well, and Rent insists that he does not speak with young girls, and Lorraine emphasizes again, asking if by chance he is not seeing it. He does not catch the hint, and continues insisting, and Lorraine, infuriated, prepares to cast a spell on him, while Rent, dying of pain, attempts a more flirtatious approach. But Lorraine remains angry, for thinking that he gave up on all women. But Rent is clever, so he speaks that this is not true. He only said what he thought of her, causing Lorraine to blush, and wondering if he really said what he thought, or if he only said it to escape the situation. And yes, she is basically falling in love with him. And on the following day, Rent goes to the Adventurers Guild, where our hero is received by Sheila, who speaks once more, to hurry to speak in private, since she has something very important to comment with him. She then reveals that they gave him a commission on behalf of the latter family, and this ends up completely disconcerting our dear Rent, since he does not know anyone from that family. Or so he believes, since this letter was written by Isaac, the fellow he met back in the swamp, and who, as it appears, is a servant of the latter family. The job is directed specifically to him. But Sheila relates that the Latters are a family that, despite not being of the nobility, is very ancient, and has a very large influence within the city of Malt, and that ordinary people like her do not usually know much about them, due to how reserved they can be. In fact, to each new chief of the guild, it is emphasized not to offend the latter family. She recommends to Rent that he not refuse their jobs, although Rent did not think of refusing, despite being a danger, they discovering his truth. After all, if his appearance had bothered Isaac, he would not have sent another job in the first place. Rent ends up accepting the task, and meanwhile, back at the orphanage, we see that they revealed to the person in charge that she suffers from a disease called macula, and she already knew, and without hesitating, she warns that she will call the church to send a replacement. But that will not be necessary, since they possess a medicine that will clean the impurities from her whole body. But she refuses, because the medicine is excessively expensive. But Elias speaks, crying not to worry about the money. This causes her to think that it was Wilfred who harvested the flower, although he responds that this would be impossible for him. And both explain that an adventurer accepted the mission to bring the flower for only 1 copper coin, and all of this was thanks to Elias. The director understands that the adventurer who took charge of everything was Rent, who supposedly had to only clean the attic. For his part, Rent arrives at the house of the latter family and greets the guard at the entrance, asking for Isaac. He responds that he is located inside the house and recommends going with caution when he goes to cross the labyrinth. Rent asks if it is really necessary to cross it, since he is in that place for work and finds it very strange. But the guard responds that it is through there that he must pass to reach the mansion. And Rent is very intelligent and already asks for a map. But the guard speaks that this will be of no use to him, since this is an object created with a magic artifact, which causes it to change its path from time to time, making possessing a map useless. Rent is surprised and asks if this is possible, and the guard responds that the heads of the latter family like to collect incredible magic objects, and that they created that labyrinth with these objects. Rent does not like the idea of having to cross because of a hobby of those people, but the guard convinces him to enter, since there is a good reward if he manages to cross the labyrinth and reach the mansion. And if he succeeds, he will receive a magic object from their collection. Furthermore, that day is one of the few times that the head of the latter family opens the entrance to the labyrinth, being a very special day. Rent asks for a piece of advice from the guard, since he overcame this labyrinth, and he responds that the sun will not help him, and that with this clue it will be more than enough. Rent then hurries to enter, because he is very motivated to obtain a magic artifact, since if he wants to be of mithril rank, he requires enough money to have high-quality equipment. He then uses the map that the elf presented to him, but it is of no use, because it is a labyrinth created from a magic object, and not real. Rent ends up going around and around in circles, and accepting that he ended up completely lost. He then continues moving around, trusting his good sense of direction, while remembering that the guard mentioned that the sun would not help. Anyone in this place would be stuck, as a sense of direction can be completely terrible. He thinks that in labyrinths there are very few places from where one can see the sun. Although the sun does not guide, a good adventurer must know how to draw a mental map. But if his mental map were correct, he would have found the exit a long time ago. And as he advances, he comes across a structure, and in its interior, he finds a girl who asks him if he thinks of giving up. But Rent makes it clear that he does not know that word, and in that case, the little one advises him to take the right path. But he must take into account that he still has a good amount of time left inside the labyrinth. She recommends taking a break and asks if he would like to accompany her to have some tea, and Rent accepts the tempting offer. And Lorraine was right. This guy here is a magnet for children. After settling down, Rent thinks that she must be one of the daughters of the Latours, and comments that that kettle appears to be enchanted, although he also notes that she did not place the tea leaves. But the girl merely smiles, and upon serving him, explains that the kettle recreates the flavor of any tea that has already been prepared in it. Rent is surprised and asks where she obtained something so brilliant like that. The girl responds that there are 2 types of magic objects, those from labyrinths and those that artisans manufacture to attempt to imitate them. That kettle was created 200 years ago in a labyrinth, and its value is around 300 platinum coins. Rent is unable to believe it, since with a single coin of that he can live his whole life and still have some left over. He perceives that the Latours are much richer than most nobles, and the girl mentions that some adventurers would risk their lives to try to obtain it. Rent responds that someone can risk their life inside a labyrinth and obtain only a pile of useless junk. The detail is that upon tasting the tea, Rent uncovers his face, and the girl upon seeing him is surprised. Rent is fascinated with the flavor of the tea, and the girl calmly responds that she is glad, since it is her favorite. At that, she apologizes for her impertinence and asks if that mask is magical. Rent confirms and relates that he bought it from an acquaintance at a market stall, while thinking that it cost only 3 copper coins, and the girl is fascinated with the mask, and did not know that in markets there existed objects so fascinating. With shyness, she asks if he would be willing to sell it to her. Lorraine thinks that collecting magic objects is a hobby of the family. The girl says to him that she is willing to pay more than the mask is worth, and Rent would love to be able to sell it if he at least managed to remove it. Although thanks to this mask, nobody knows that he became an undead creature, and for that reason, he apologizes to her, since he cannot sell it. The girl responds that there is no reason to apologize, since she thought that the object must be important to him, and that it was a lack of manners to have tried to buy it. Rent expresses gratitude for the tea, and before departing, the girl gives a clue, recommending that he stop looking at the sun. Rent goes away, while she smiles mysteriously, and on his way, Rent continues looking at the sun, wondering what that has to do with it, but at that, he notices something strange. Upon throwing a stone into the air, he discovers that it was transported. He is not sure if he should go back, but begins to run desperately upon realizing that he was transported from the labyrinth. He continues advancing incessantly until he finally arrives at the mansion. At the entrance, the girl from before was waiting, and congratulates him for having discovered the secret of the labyrinth. She then introduces herself as Laura Latour, and reveals that she is actually the head of the Lauder family, and Isaac is accompanying her. Rent introduces himself, revealing that he is a bronze-class adventurer, and he warns that he is there for work, and asks about the prize for having crossed the labyrinth, since that is more important. And Laura speaks that he will receive his reward, since very few manage to cross this labyrinth. While they walk through the mansion, she says that he can take any object from the collection of her family, something that Rent loses no time in asking if he can take the object that creates the labyrinth. She apologizes because she cannot deliver that item, but Rent confesses that he was only joking, because the object kept him walking for a long time inside that infernal labyrinth, and he said that only to mock her face. And Laura responds that he is someone quite fascinating. While they descend the stairs to the room of objects, she mentions that those manufactured by human hands are the most stable. However, humans are only capable of creating simple objects, like those lights. Rent feels that she is someone as mysterious as a labyrinth, and upon arriving at the room he is impressed to see that it possesses too many items. Laura mentions that it is a mystery how labyrinths appear, and the reason for their existence. Nobody has found this answer, and the same occurs with the objects. Before, she mentioned that some were junk and that people did not know how to use them, and for that reason, she throws an object to him, and Rent asks what that thing is. Although she also does not know, when she throws that, it begins to jump without stopping. Rent asks why she collects all of that, and she responds that it is because she wants to. Rent asks about another object, and Laura mentions that they are like the airships of the West, which transport people and function on steam, because that is a small model that functions with mana, and can be controlled with that. When testing it, Rent is enchanted, and Laura asks if he is going to keep the item. Rent thinks that he wants it, but it does not cease to be a toy, and his inner child desires it, but his adult side prefers something more useful. However, at that moment, he notices that he can transfer his mind to that of the drone, but this consumes too much mana. Laura mentions that her object was found in a labyrinth, and that the airships of the West were created with the basis of the model of this object, and it can be of much utility for exploration. The detail is that it consumes a lot of mana, and he cannot distance himself much from the item, and with the mana that he possesses, he will not be able to use it for much more than a few minutes, which is why he is going to think better if he is going to keep it. And meanwhile, he observes other objects, and while walking, he notices a mineral that illuminates when anything approaches, which sounds quite useful, but he is not sure if it really would be. At that, he takes a painting, and Laura tells him to press the button that is on the frame. Upon doing that, creatures come out of the painting, and Laura begins to laugh, and asks what he thinks the voices that they heard are. And while Rent notices that Laura is enjoying his reactions quite a lot, nevertheless, while rising, he touches something that absorbs his mana and begins to activate itself. Laura asks him to be careful, while Rent tells Isaac through the device to turn it off, but he is in another place for safety. Although at that moment it does not appear to be very safe, Rent cannot believe that there is a damn golem in the interior of that room. The golem attacks him, and Rent manages to even dodge, and feels that he will not be able to survive a blow from that thing. Isaac runs in search of the device to turn it off, and requests that Rent keep it occupied, while Rent asks how long this creature can stay active, only taking a little bit of his mana, but they warn that the golem activated itself with his mana, and that it becomes stronger with the mana and the organic matter that it goes finding. Rent asks Laura if he can cause damage to it, and she does not care, although she doubts that he can defeat it. Rent dodges the attacks of the golem, and manages to cut one of its arms, while remembering what Lorraine taught him. Golems possess a magic word on the forehead, which means truth, and if a character was added, the word will change to death. With this, the golem will fall, but upon approaching, he observes that there is nothing written, and the golem throws him against some boxes. He returns to remember that Lorraine said that this was in the past, and Rent asks what he can do in the case of not possessing a word. That being the case, he will have to escape or fight against it, and Rent asks for the device. But Isaac is still over there searching. Laura is enjoying the spectacle, or at least the beating that Rent is receiving. He grows tired of being dragged from one side to another. Although he did not wish to make this technique public, he has no other option left, and he performs a fusion of mana and spirit. But before the golem ends up turning the dress into junk, Laura stops it. Isaac apologizes because his poor organization placed him in danger, although Laura intervenes because she is his lady and it is her responsibility. However, Rent says that she has no reason to worry because it was he who touched the magic object. He only hopes that they do not charge for everything that broke. Laura warns that her servants will take charge of that much later, and asks which object he thinks of choosing. Rent responds that he wants to continue observing more items, and while walking, he notices a shelf with objects left by monsters. They are not magic objects, but they serve to make weapons and medicine. At that, Rent senses a very strong scent, and feels an ecstasy upon seeing a flask. Laura asks if that catches his attention, and reveals that it is vampire blood. Rent is totally focused on this object, and Laura mentions that according to what they say, if someone drank vampire blood, they would end up becoming one. But that this is nothing more than a rumor, since there are several records of people who drank blood and most only went mad and died. The few who survived became incapacitated, and Rent asks if she believes that nobody has become a vampire, although it is not something that one goes around shouting to the four winds, since they would certainly kill them immediately, and surely they are only rumors. But rumors are more than enough for whoever desires to achieve eternal life, and she could sell it for a fortune to some crazy aristocrat. And I thought, and you thought, so many of us thought that Rent would take the vampire blood, but he ended up taking the toy that his inner child wanted. Lorraine had already seen the airships, but did not know that they were created from magic objects. He takes the opportunity to look at Lorraine and mentions that it is very fun, while she asks who the Latters are, since they give more presents than many kings. Although Rent responds that there are not many adventurers like him who go frequently to the Tarask swamp. But right after that we discover that in reality Rent did choose the vampire blood, and they gave him the airship as a present, because of the job, which is quite complicated. Furthermore, thanks to him, Isaac will be able to take care of Laura completely, and Rent asks Lorraine if she does not want to test the toy. She says yes, but first they must face reality. On the other side, we see how Isaac prepares the dragon blood flowers to deliver to Laura, and he asks if she liked Rent, or at least it appeared so to him. Laura responds that he is a very ordinary guest, and that he excited her quite a lot, and Isaac responds that this is not bad, but that now she must rest. On the other side, Lorraine asks Rent if he thinks that that vampire blood is real, and he is completely sure, since he could feel it when he saw it, and if he drinks it, it might be that something changes in him. Lorraine asks if he is sure that he wants to do this, since Laura says that whoever drinks this vampire blood ends up with a horrible end. Rent is a bit undecided, and confesses that he has a bit of dread and fear, but he knows that he needs this blood to be able to evolve, and his body is asking for it. His vision then begins to turn red in that manner, and although it could be that his undead body managed to endure, she is not sure and wants him not to run this risk. She prefers that he continue as an undead creature eternally, but knows that this is not what he wants, because although he has no talent and it takes very many years, he yearns for the moment of becoming a mithril rank adventurer. Rent observes the blood and his eyes change shape, and at that Lorraine begins to think, and Rent asks what happened. She responds that she had only related what Sheila asked the last time. Rent requests that she tell him, but she says that it is nothing. However, Rent continues insisting, because now this worries him even more. Lorraine decides to ask, but warns that he does not need to answer if he does not want to. Rent thinks that she already knows everything about him, although she responds that she knows almost nothing, and asks the reason why he wants to become a mithril rank adventurer. Rent was not even aware of this. He remembers that he had already told her, and Lorraine responds that she expected an answer like that. She then tells him to drink whatever blood he wants, whether it is of a vampire, of a troll, anyone, so that he may evolve once and for all. Rent then requests that she not get irritated, but she remembers his own words. One does not ask about the past of an adventurer. After saying that to her in the past, she did not dare to ask once more, and Rent responds that the occasion never arose, and that it is also not a very interesting story, but reveals that his motive is to become someone capable of preventing tragedies. Haitna is his village of origin. It was isolated in the mountains, and his father used to run the errands of the village. He was only 5 years old when his parents took him outside for the first time. He was fascinated upon finally seeing the outside world. At that, a small girl named Julian asks how he thinks the city will be, saying that surely there will be things they have never seen before. But that Rent of the past was a coward, who feared being attacked by bandits and other things. Julian responds that he is just a fearful coward, and that this way he will never be able to become an adventurer, ordering him to keep silent to prevent his parents from hearing them. She confesses that she would love to travel the world when she grew up, see the waterfalls, the floating islands, and the cities surrounded by water. Rumors say that there are many fascinating places, although Rent feels only fear because everything appears dangerous, but Julian makes it clear that she would love to become much stronger to thus protect him. At that time, Rent was a coward, which surprises Lorraine, who imagined him with a wooden sword practicing every day. He responds that that would be his friend Julian, who took him to stroll all over the city, although afterwards they were scolded for it. However, on that day, he had a lot of fun, but when they were returning to the village, they were attacked. His mother ordered them to escape, while Rent was frozen, seeing his parents bloodied and dead. But above all, upon seeing an enormous creature staring at him fixedly, Julian takes him by the hand and leads him running away from there, lamenting having abandoned her parents. But it was the right thing to do, since only they had survived, and after a long time running, they finally decide to rest. And upon thinking that the monster had already stopped pursuing them, they made a grave mistake, because upon looking to the top of a hill, it is there, watching them. That monstrous wolf was merely playing with its prey, and in the blink of an eye, it leaps to attack them. But Julian places herself in front, dying in Rent's place, and upon holding her, she in her last breath, remembers that she would protect him, and speaks that he must become much stronger. But the wolf was about to kill him, but by luck an adventurer arrives just at that moment to save him. He faces the monstrous wolf while Rent watches in awe. And after the adventurer shows his skills, the wolf flees, and upon reuniting with Rent, he asks why he did not appear before. The adventurer apologizes for having arrived so late, while Rent bursts into tears. After scaring away the wolf, the adventurer takes the corpses to the village. Since that day, Rent began to train like crazy, and asked the adventurer how he could become one, since his friend wanted to do that, and now he inherited her dream. The adventurer asks his age, and Rent responds that he is 5 years old, and he speaks that he must be 15 to be able to register at the Adventurers Guild. That is why he must train hard during these 10 years. He must learn to face a monster, and requires knowledge of how to read, write, and also mathematics, besides learning about herbs, magic, and how to survive in the wilderness. In that village there must be hunters and herbalists. Now, his job will be to convince them to teach him. Rent was surprised, because a normal adult would have only told him to try his best. However, he did not. He mentions that knowledge and techniques are only the starting point, because everything will depend on his own effort. At that, he introduces himself as Wilfred Juev. He is a mithril rank adventurer, and requests that Rent go see him when he becomes a real adventurer, although he also does not know where he will be in the next 10 years, and tells Rent that he must not die until he has fulfilled his dream. Lorraine responds that she would not know how to describe such luck, since the probability of being rescued by a mithril rank adventurer is the same as coming across a dragon. From what she could notice, he inherited the kindness of that same adventurer. He was a great fellow, and understood that for a small boy, his objective would be impossible to survive without guidance. For that reason, he advised him by being as specific as he could. Rent confesses that this is his reason, because when he reaches mithril rank, just like Wilfred, he will return in search of that wolf. The detail is that 20 years have already passed, and he has not moved past the bronze class. He is afraid of dying if he drinks the blood, but do not think of giving up. Lorraine responds that she already knew he was only pretending to have doubts, because she knows very well the type of person he is, and knows that he will never back down. But he must not worry, because if he dies, she will bury him properly. Rent requests that she burn him in case he goes mad, but she desires that nothing bad happens. So Rent drinks all the blood, and everything goes well for now. Lorraine already becomes all cheerful, thinking that in reality, this blood was fake. But suddenly the effect of the blood activates, and Rent feels suffocated by a great power. He vomits and falls to the floor. While screaming from the unbearable pain, Lorraine watches startled and with fear, while Rent feels as if his body were remaking itself. He does not want to become a monster, and while transforming, he asks not to turn into a monster like the one that destroyed them. At that he hears Lorraine's voice, and Lorraine reminds him that he still has a dream to fulfill, asking for him to come back to her. Rent then reacts and manages to master the power, and on the following day, in the city of Malt, we see the blacksmith working, and his wife requests that he not overburden himself so early, although the grand sword that he is forging is for Rent, and she asks what happened to the one he gave previously. But the blacksmith is very concentrated, forging, and did not respond to her. He mentions that Rent appears much stronger, and he responds that, in fact, he learned several strange tricks, and for that reason it is necessary to make a sword worthy of him. On the other hand, already at the orphanage, Elise imagines herself as an adventurer, and the sister watches very cheerfully, although Elise asks for her to remain in bed because she must rest. But the sister responds that she is very well, and proposes to everyone to eat together. She expresses gratitude to Elise, because if it were not for her, she would not feel so well, and Elise responds that this is not true, because they received help from many people. On the other side, at the Adventurers Guild, we see how Rise and Laura now make a team with Rena. Sheila warns them that on that day there are very many jobs for them, and they rejoice for having arrived early. While they observe the announcements, they discuss which job they should accept, although Rise observes one that pays very well. The detail is that they must descend a whole level of a dungeon, and Rena recommends not accepting it, because it is quite risky. They must accept only jobs that are in accordance with their strength, and Sheila requests that they have caution in case they decide to go to that labyrinth, since if something goes wrong, the most important thing is that they return alive, and the three of them remember the teachings of Rent. And meanwhile, we see how he finds himself in a sort of dream. He is in the middle of a huge lake, or ocean, and I do not know what that is. He mentions that he would love to continue sleeping, since ever since he became an undead creature, he simply felt as if his body and his soul were empty. However, with each evolution, he acquired organs and skin, and the fear and the despair of becoming something that was not him corroded him. But he managed to endure all that, and upon awakening, he observes that Lorraine is reading a book. He asks what she is reading, and she responds that it is a vampire ecology. According to the book, they range from lesser vampire to medium and greater vampire. The more powerful they are, the rarer and more difficult they are to see and to classify. Rent continues without understanding why she is reading this, and she responds that it is very obvious, and congratulates him on his evolution. And we see that now Rent really looks like a human. She then requests that he take off his clothes, and notices that he counts with a pair of wings, although upon perceiving their presence, they disappeared. So, if he concentrates, he can control their size. He wonders what it was that he became, and Lorraine also does not know. But whatever it is something more powerful. She supposes that he is a lesser vampire. Although she has not seen any that possess wings, she warns that she will investigate the matter of the wings, but before, requests that he show his face. Upon doing that, she sees his mouth, and notices that his canines are very visible. For that reason, it is evident that he is a vampire. The detail is that upon seeing the upper part of his face, his eyes now are red. This is a characteristic of a vampire, although there also exist humans with red eyes. So, this will not suffice for them to discover him, and Rent is quite relieved, and Lorraine, content, speaks that it had been a long time since she saw that face. She says that it is a bit late to say this, but that she needed to speak, and very emotionally, she holds his face and welcomes him back. Now we see that they together are collecting some flowers, and Rent expresses gratitude for everything that she did for him. Lorraine asks if he ever went out in search of Wilfred. Rent reveals that he did it a few times, although he does not believe that he is located in this country, and it would be very dangerous for a bronze rank adventurer to go alone to another country to search for him. Furthermore, he wanted to become much stronger to go in his search, and for that reason is why he had not left until now in these 20 years. But with his current strength, it is possible that he can see him. Lorraine then tells him to do whatever he wants, since after all he never listens to her, and if she has nothing better to do, she will go along with him to search for him. And it is here that our first journey ends. I hope that you all have enjoyed it. Do not forget to leave a like and comment down below. Vampires are far too good, just for us to know that you watched until the end. That is it, everyone. We are in this together. Stay with God. Thank you. Goodbye, and until the next video. And do not forget to comment as well if you want part 2. Thank you.